Ho, ho, ho! Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. Ian is here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Hope everybody's got their Fireball and Fireball eggnog ready to go for the holiday season. So I got to tell you, I am friends with Santa. I want everybody out there to know this. We went to Hebrew school together. So I've known Santa for a long, long time. I would consider us buds. And I'll just say this. I've been asking around about, hey, who's been good this year, who's been bad. And quite frankly, I think there is a lump of coal in the stocking of Tennessee Titan fans this year. But it's not your fault at all that it is that way. They play a meaningless game on Sunday. I will be in attendance against the Seattle Seahawks. Half the football team is out. The quarterback is questionable. We'll see what happens in that one, but it kind of is what it is. So the real question is what's going to happen at the end of the year. Now, I'm sure many of you think that, hey, Mike Vrabel will be back. Rand Carthon will be back. They'll have $100 million of money to spend. They'll have draft picks. This is the year. In fact, that's what most of you feel. Most of you don't want to fire the coach or fire the general manager. Obviously, I'm different, but again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I was wondering when I was watching the Thursday night football game last night between the Saints and the Rams, and I saw Dennis Allen on the sideline, and I thought to myself, that guy's fired, especially what he did before the end of the half. And then I started thinking in my head, I'm like, there's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to be open on Black Monday. Just for starters, Vegas, the Chargers, and the Panthers are already open. Washington, New England, and Chicago are also sure to come open. So that's 6 jobs for sure that are going to be open on Black Monday. Then there's 5 more that probably come open, right? Atlanta, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Pittsburgh could. There's all this talk about Tomlin. And then there's the Jets. And who knows about the Jets? So again, 6 jobs that I feel pretty confident will be open, plus 5 that potentially could come open. And I have to believe that 2 out of the 3 NFC South jobs will be open. Whether it's Atlanta, the Saints, or the Buccaneers, whoever makes the playoffs, I guess, keeps their job. But then the other 2, they're out. So right now we're talking about a possible 11 job openings in the NFL. Probably at a minimum 8. How many legitimate candidates are there for these 8 jobs out there? I mean, legitimate home run candidates that owners could say, hey, that guy is my head coach. 4. Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Ben Johnson of the Lions. Dan Quinn of the Cowboys. Who else? Bill Belichick? Do you want Belichick coaching your team? I'm sure most of these teams probably wouldn't want Belichick coaching their team. Which takes us to Mike Vrabel. Again, I don't think Vrabel's going to be fired at the end of the year. But what about next year? If Vrabel puts up the same performance this year as he did next year, I think most of you by this time will be screaming to fire him. And just like with everything else, whether it is the Predators or Jerry Stackhouse or whatever it may be, Craig Aukerman, you guys are going to say, wow, Jared, you were right. But then I started to put myself in Mike Vrabel's shoes. And I started to think, there could be 11 possible job openings. Again, probably 7 to 9 job openings. Jonathan Hutton was on the midday show earlier this week, and he's more connected than he lets on when it comes to the Titans. And Jonathan Hutton said, next year is the year for Mike Vrabel.
If I'm putting together a list of hot seat coaches, I'm not listing him simply because I don't think he's going to be fired. Now, I didn't think J-Rob was going to be either when he was fired. But does it set up a hot seat list for 2024? Oh, yeah. All of the conversation sets up for a off season of you have the most salary cap space, you have draft picks, put it together, and that will be the hot seat season. Because right now, the narrative around what's gone on, the blame was pointed to John Robinson, fair or not. The general manager and head coach are not aligned contractually. And the assumption, and I think it's totally fair, is that Vrabel's calling shots. So if he's doing that, the blame's going to go to him next.
So I don't completely believe that Vrabel's calling shots, but I do believe the blame's going to go to him next. That's how it works in the NFL. It's coach, GM, and quarterback, and it is a cycle. Mike Mularkey got the blame first. He's out. Marcus Mariota got the blame second. He's out. John Robinson, who was incredibly popular when he fired Mike Mularkey, is next. Vrabel, incredibly popular. Robinson gets the blame. He's out. Tannehill, the quarterback, he's out. Now it's just Vrabel. So if there are going to be anywhere from 7 to 9 head coach openings and a handful of legitimate candidates for these jobs, would Mike Vrabel be better off trying to get out of here to get a better job? I'm convinced of this. I think the New England Patriots are going to go with Gerard Mayo. I wouldn't do it if I were the Patriots, but I'm convinced that the Patriots aren't going to want to get in a draft pick war for Vrabel, or maybe there's some principal element of it with the Titans, and how much they would ask or whatever it may be. But if you're Mike Vrabel and the Chargers come calling, they have a quarterback. Chicago comes calling. They have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. You would get Caleb Williams. The Commanders come calling. They have one of the richest owners, I guess not the richest, but they have a brand new ownership group and kind of a blank canvas in Washington. If any of these teams come calling, wouldn't you at least think about it? Again, this is a shotgun marriage, and I'm not convinced Vrabel and Rand Carthon see eye to eye. Specifically, given the fact that Vrabel went up to New England and said, it ain't like it here everywhere, folks. And then reports came out of Foxborough that Vrabel and Rand Carthon didn't see eye to eye. That didn't seem, how do I put this? Didn't seem like it was a surprise where that was coming from. So again, you're Vrabel. You've got 2 years reportedly left on your contract here, which means that you're not technically a lame dunk. If Vrabel had 1 year left on his contract, then he'd be in some deep doo-doo, because then they'd have to either extend his contract or he'd have a lot of assistant coaches quit because, again, he'd be a lame dunk. But do you look at one of those 11 potential job openings and think, I can get a 5-year top-of-the-market contract away from this imploding organization? I can go get, again, any one of those jobs that comes open, and there are not enough candidates for these jobs. Any one of these jobs that comes open, if they got Mike Vrabel, they would be hailed by the national media, whether this is fair or not, and I don't think it is, but they would be hailed by the national media as having hit a home run, maybe even a grand slam higher by adding Mike Vrabel. That matters to owners. Their fan base would react with utter joy. That also matters to fan bases. So if Vrabel can get top of the market money and a fresh new 5-year contract, don't you think he'd be looking? Again, I understand that we all want to believe that, hey, we're all in this together and we're all pulling the rope in one direction and we all work together. But sometimes it's not sensical to imagine that people don't look out for themselves. That is business. And so I don't know what things are like behind the scenes. There was all this smoke that things weren't very good here. And again, it did look dysfunctional on draft night. With, again, Carthon saying, everybody be positive. This will be the greatest moment of some of these guys' careers. And then 5 minutes later, Vrabel saying, if the NFL draft is the best part of your career, you probably didn't have a very good career. It was dysfunctional, or at least it looked that way. Has that changed? Again, for the cameras and on the record, it's, oh, we're all best buddies. Let's hold hands. But are we sure that that's really what it's like? And so if you're Mike Vrabel and you know that coming back you'll be on the hot seat and you'll have 2 years left on your contract, Or you can jump to another organization, not have Amy as your owner, not have Jared Stillman on the radio talking about you every day, if that bothers him, and I'm sure it probably does a little bit, but whatever. They don't have the Chargers don't have this kind of media market, even though they're in Los Angeles, because nobody cares about the Chargers. I couldn't tell you about Vegas. I got offered a job in Charlotte years ago. I turned it down. They definitely have it in Boston. That I can promise you. But, I mean, again, if you're Vrabel, I think you at least have to think about it. And the only way that Vrabel couldn't think about it, or shouldn't think about it, or wouldn't think about it, is if he knew he could survive another bad season. If Vrabel knew that he could go into next year, and that if Will Levis doesn't pop, and this team doesn't make the playoffs for a second year in a row, he'll keep his job, then maybe it would make some sense for Vrabel not to be looking around at the market. But I don't think Vrabel can go another bad year and stay the coach of this team. And not only that, for his sake, I don't think he can handle another bad year. So while we talk about what should the Titans do with Vrabel, I think the question also has to be asked, what does Vrabel want to do with the Titans? And should Vrabel be looking? 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program. And then the Titans would want some trade compensation in return, which is certainly part of the equation. Coming up next, I got depressed last night. And no, it wasn't over Louisville basketball getting beat by 21 points against Kentucky. In all seriousness, I'm glad it wasn't worse. That's not what depressed me. Then I was very cheered up by the Predators game. And then after the Predators game was over, I got depressed. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025, Fireball Hot Take Friday. And again, as I told you, I'm friends with Santa. I have some Preds tickets to give away later in the show today. Little holiday gift from us to you. Hey, tune into 94.9 The Fan tomorrow for Vandy men's basketball. The Commodores take on Memphis on the road. Tip-off is at 3 o'clock. Pre-game's at 2:30. And coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com.
3 different movements in the shifting and motion, and then a side-on pass to Nakua. And off goes the rookie for a first down. 6'2", built, and he's having a fantastic season.
Yeah, and against the Saints, you're going to get a lot of man-to-man. That's the big thing. Who's going to win the one-on-one matchups? He's caught the ball short of the first.
3-by-1 to the right side. Looks that way, throws that way, caught! Nakua, touchdown. To the 48-yard line, the Rams begin this drive, play action. Stafford, good protection, fires wide open, over the middle. Nakua to the 25-yard line, he goes. Stopped there by Jordan Howden. Play action, don't get pressure on Stafford. Down the sideline goes the pass. It's a little short, and Nakua comes back. Did he hold on? No, he didn't. Well, maybe they say he did. He held on, and they're going to give him the catch. Here you go again. What a play. Adebo is there. Taylor are both there. Somehow he's able to grab it, secure it, and end the play.
And Terry, what do you see? That looks like a complete catch, right?
It is, Kirk.
It's 3rd and inches, and they pick up the first down and a lot more, and Nakua down the sideline he goes before he steps out of bounds. 148 yards, that one good for 29.
Puka Nakua last night for the Rams. 5th-round rookie, and he may just be a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. Unbelievable. So I said last night I got depressed. I did. I turned on the Louisville game when I got home, and Louisville got blown out by Kentucky, which was expected. Then I turned on the Predators game, which was a gritty, enjoyable, real slugfest last night. And the Predators won, which was great. Really won it at the end there. We'll get to them in a little bit. And then I turned on Thursday Night Football, and I got depressed. And the reason why I got depressed watching the Rams is because I look at a team that was almost in the exact same position as you. The only difference between you and the Rams is that the Rams won that Super Bowl in 2021. You didn't. That's it. You were the number 1 seed. They won the Super Bowl. I don't necessarily think they were the best team that year. But, again, we play the games, and Tampa Bay had a meltdown in the first half and at the very, very end of that game, and Jimmy Garoppolo was horrible after Aaron Rodgers had his meltdown in the playoffs again, and Joe Burrow didn't have an offensive line. So, I watched the Rams, who, again, last year they weren't very good, but they haven't had draft choices, so where you have busted on yours, they haven't had them. And yet I look at the players that they draft, and I look at the players that they develop, and I compare them to you, and I get depressed. You know who their top pick last year was? Because they didn't have a first-round pick. Their top pick was a guard from TCU named Steve Avila. He was taken in the 2nd round, 25 picks after you drafted your guard with the 11th overall pick. And according to those stats Ramon Foster put out the other day trying to defend Peter Skoronski, Avila's had a better season. So their 2nd-round pick at guard has had a better season than your 1st-round pick at guard. In the 3rd round, they drafted Byron Young, who has 6 sacks. With their 2nd, and I should mention Byron Young out of Tennessee, your backyard. With their 2nd 3rd-round pick, they drafted Kobe Turner, a defensive tackle, who has 6.5 sacks. And then, of course, Puka Nakua is going to set an NFL rookie record this year for receiving yards, and he looks like the next Cooper Kupp. Now, sure, the Rams aren't perfect. They whiffed on Stetson Bennett in the 4th round, who I don't think will ever play a down in the NFL. But the thing about the Rams, because a lot of people said this to me yesterday about Nakua, and they said, if the Titans drafted Puka Nakua, Jared, do you think that he would be having the season that he's having with the Rams? Isn't that part of the problem? See, that's what the Rams do. The Rams identify players that fit what it is that they want them to do. They draft it, and then they develop it. And they know what to draft because they know what to coach. And they know what to coach because they draft what they coach. The Rams have a grasp on how to do this. The Rams, and we talk about, I don't know if an offensive line coach could come in here and really make a difference. I don't know, but don't you think the Rams receivers coach, who's been there as long as Sean McVay has, don't you think he's played somewhat of a role in this? Remember how good Robert Woods was with the Rams? Remember how Odell Beckham saved his career with the Rams? Cooper Kupp developed into a superstar. Van Jefferson developed into a player. Tutu Atwell was starting to develop into a player. And now there's Puka Nacua. That's not an accident. Again, I get depressed. You're in the exact same spot as the Rams. They cut back on spending this year. Why? Because they spent so much money year after year trying to win that Super Bowl, specifically the one in their own building, which to their credit, they did. After that, Andrew Whitworth retires. Jalen Ramsey gets traded. They dump on Robert Woods. They miss on Allen Robinson. They kind of have to bring it back a little bit. But that's okay, because Sean McVay and Les Snead, they'll figure it out. In fact, here's an example. Everybody, do you remember this? This was 2 years ago, the 2022 NFL Draft. When they were having their first night one press conference, even though they didn't have a pick, they had their night one press conference as mandated by the NFL, when in the middle of their press conference, the New England Patriots drafted a guard, Cole Strange, in the first round. Somebody that many people thought, wait a minute, what? This was the Rams' reaction.
Definitely. A lot of times, if as an example, you really
just went.
Oh my, UT Chattanooga to the first round. Hey, where is?
How about that? And we wasted our time watching him, thinking he'd be at 104, maybe.
I mean, they're laughing because it's like, holy crap, we thought that guy was a third-round pick, and those morons in New England drafted him. Ha, 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 ha. And that's how I feel right now. When I see Puka Nacua having the performances he's having, when I look at the guy that you drafted similarly to Nacua, and Kyle Phillips can't even get on the football field, and he can't even catch a freaking punt. And is it because Kyle Phillips can't catch punts? Or is it because you can't coach him on how to catch punts? I don't know. It drives me crazy. And it should drive you crazy too, but that's just an example about all the excuses. Oh, this roster, the cap that John Robinson and the bad picks, and the Rams had no picks. Now, that was a conscious choice that they made, but it doesn't change the fact that they didn't have any picks because they traded for Jalen Ramsey, Matthew Stafford, and Von Miller. They didn't spend any money. And again, that was a conscious choice. But it doesn't change the fact that when they went bargain hunting in free agency, I guess they did better than Andre Dillard. And that is what absolutely depressed me last night watching it, is that I've got everybody out there telling me this Titans draft was so great with Skoronski. Jared, he's going to be a 10-year starter at guard. Did you watch Game Sunday? That doesn't count. They drafted Will Levis in the second round. Yes, a quarterback that they obviously didn't like enough to draft in the first round and let every other team in the league get a crack at. They really, boy, they aced that one. Meanwhile, here's Puka Nacua setting an NFL record. That's the difference. And again, that's what depresses me. And right now we're in what I call the excuse-making stage, where everything's an excuse and everything is it's okay, and it's that right there, Sean McVay, that's a coach. And again, the Rams know what they're looking for. They know how to identify it. They draft it, and then they're able to coach it because they draft what they coach. I don't know if the Titans do that. I don't know if the Titans do that or if they have a giant board and say, well, we're on the clock here, and Peter's the 8th guy, and we've got the 11th pick, and we just got bamboozled by the Texans in Arizona on draft night, and we told Diana Rossini everything, and now we don't have a plan. Take Peter. Where are we going to play him? Oh, we'll figure it out. Okay, take him. That's the difference. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We got a lot of phones at 615-737-1025 here on the program on Stillman and Company. And I'm just going to tell it like it is. Mike Vrabel might have to fire a coach. But not because I want Mike Vrabel to fire this coach. In fact, I want Mike Vrabel not to fire this coach. But this coach goes against everything that it feels like Mike Vrabel tells his coaches to do or how he tells his coaches to act. We will get to that coming up next. Fireball whiskey, that's right. It's not the holidays without a little Fireball eggnog. That's right. You're probably thinking to yourself, Fireball eggnog? Don't bash it until you try it. That's right. Fireball eggnog and Fireball just in general. It is a fantastic way not only to celebrate the holidays, but also to ring in the new year. Be sure to do that with ice-cold Fireball whiskey. Goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy.
Mike, when it's all about winning, How frustrating is it for you, like on Sunday nights, when you've lost overtime games at home when there was a missed extra point involved?
Well, whether you miss an extra point, whether you don't intercept the football, whether you throw an interception, all those things contribute. Whether you have a penalty, on a punt that's backed up, like there's a bunch of plays that contribute to that. I would say that losing is devastating. It's again, the players put a lot into it. They play hard. Being close isn't good enough. Everybody feels better about the work that you put in when you win, and you want the players that go out there and work for you and play for you to have success. You want them to feel that, and then their bodies don't hurt so bad, and they come to work, and then we all come to work.
You might be 2 PATs away from two more wins. Thought about that in terms of how close you are to a different story?
I think about a lot of things, so can make points up other ways. Nick's been really good for us. I'm sure he'd like to have that kick back yesterday. We'd like to have a lot of things back.
There you go. That was Vrabel on Monday. I mean, it almost felt like therapy, right? Mike, you missed 2 extra points so far, cost you 2 games. Well, we did this and we don't get a there, and we just, it just felt like that answer was a lot longer than it needed to be. I don't know if Vrabel was putting his heart into it or if Vrabel was trying to keep his heart out of it with that long-winded answer. But I think what this does is add that to the list of Titans assistant coaches or Titans coaches and the bull crap that spews out of their mouth. And honestly, it's kind of insulting. Yesterday, we played the Tim Kelly cut where he talked about how it was a perceived bad game for Jalen Duncan and Peter Skoronski. Did you watch the game? So I absolutely hate that, but I think that it comes directly from Vrabel of, hey, everybody has to be positive all the time. We want positivity, even if that means not telling the truth. It's almost like there's an edict from the coach to not tell the truth. Which takes me to the special teams coach, Tom Quinn, who is an interim special teams coach because Mike Vrabel reluctantly fired Craig Aukerman, it seems, after he had no choice after that Colts game. Yesterday at the podium, the new Titans special teams coach, Tom Quinn, was asked about all the problems or really all facets of the game on Sunday. This is 1 minute of Tom Quinn answering all of the questions as succinctly and I think directly and accurately as possible. And I don't think he gave away any trade secrets. Ian, go ahead.
How would you evaluate maybe how Mason's done for you here over the last Sunday in particular?
I thought he did very well. He caught the punts. The one that he didn't catch was a tough one. It was shorter. But he came up, caught the ball square, and he got vertical.
As a guy who kind of came in, obviously, with kind of big responsibilities, big shoes to fill, how would you evaluate his first few weeks there?
I thought his first week he did very well, and then last week he was too inconsistent. He's got to be more consistent with the direction of the punt. So, if we want it to go left, we want it to go left, not in the middle of the field.
Was Nick, was that more just a technique issue, his miss on the extra point? Or?
Just a little quick. I mean, the snap, the hold were good, just a little quick on it.
How deflating is that when you score a touchdown and then the point after is missed like that? How deflating?
It is deflating because, that point just hangs over your head the whole game. And so it's tough. I mean, you got to make the kicks. I mean, that's what we're paid to do.
Was there anything there that you have any question about now? How did Ty Zentner do this week? First week, he was good. Second week, not so much. When you're supposed to punt the ball to the left and we want you to punt it to the left, you punt it down the middle, that's not good. The end. How did Mason Kinsey do catching the ball? He did well. He came up, he squared his body, he ran through it. This is what we're expecting of him. This is what we did. Great. What about the extra point? Was it because every time the Titans screw something up around here, they never tell you who screwed up. And so it's always like, well, was it the holder? Was it the snap? Was it the cotton candy smell that was coming from section 218? Like, what could it have been? Now with this guy, he's like, yeah, I mean, he was too quick on it. Snap was good. Hold was good. He was just too quick. And he's telling you, instead of trying to make excuses, he's saying, yeah, we're paid to make the kicks, period. There is no ambiguity with this guy. Now, he doesn't tell you anything, I would assume, in any of that is just an absolute secret no-no. But that's not what Titan coaches do. This is how Craig Aukerman addressed the elephant in the room of the fact that Kyle Phillips clearly cannot catch punts.
Kyle obviously has athletic ability to go back there and catch punts. He shows that all the time in practice. And now it's just a mental thing right now that we've got to have him overcome, and we all got to overcome it. And but it is tougher because it's not physical right now, because he does a great job of going and catching the ball during practice. So we just got to continue to build his confidence and build all the guys' confidence back there that they can go back there and catch the ball.
What's the definition of not physical there? Because physically he didn't catch the ball.
More bull crap, right? Paul just calls it out right then and there. Kyle Phillips is a great punt returner. Buddy, we've seen enough's enough. This guy, we get paid to do it, and it's deflating when we don't, and it's our job to do it. In fact, speaking of bullcrap coming out of the Titans coaches' mouths, speaking of Paul, this was Paul who asked Jason Hodeling, the offensive line coach, asked him about the group's improvement. This is from Paul put this on Twitter. Listen to this.
How about the personal improvements, individual improvements out of them?
Yeah, I think there's been improvement from some guys, individually. There's some numbers that stats are one thing and all those things. But as far as individual improvement, I think there's been some individual improvement for the guys as a whole, the whole group.
Oh, there's been improvement on the offensive line for the whole group? Oh, that's great. Except that it is complete and total crap. And it drives me crazy. I don't need you to tell me that everything is freaking lollipops. What I want you to tell me is I want you to tell me the truth. I want you to tell me right then and there. I want you to say, hey, we messed up on this play. We've got to do better here. Mike, why can't Peter play left tackle? Well, we don't think that Peter's feet move fast enough for him to be able to play left tackle. We think he's got the play strength to be a guard, and we've got to get better around him. And I don't even know if that's the answer. I'm just telling you, tell me the freaking truth. Just once in your life. Please just tell me the truth. And only the new special teams coach will do that, which makes me think that Vrabel's going to fire that guy at the end of the year because he's letting too much information out. Not positive enough either. 615-737-1025 here on our program, 615-737-1025. Text her into the text line, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Says Vrabel has lost more games than he's won the last 2 years. Why would anybody want him? So with almost all of these coaching candidates, there's a knock somewhere, right? Like, for instance, I can give you the knock on Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions. He's never been a head coach before. So just because he's got that offense humming doesn't mean that he'll take over the Raiders and get them to hum the same way. We've seen Arthur Smith in Atlanta. It doesn't make any sense to me. But again, he's never been a head coach before. We got to knock on Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's not easy to work with. Just ask the owner of the 49ers. Trent Baalke, the general manager in Jacksonville, when he was in San Francisco, not easy to work with. So each one of these guys has something that is a knock on them. But for Vrabel, and again, you can make excuses or ignore it or whatever you want, but for Vrabel, the excuse is it was all John Robinson's fault. And that's how an owner can sell it to the fans. Plus, on top of it, the second Mike Vrabel gets hired, like let's say Vrabel ends up politicking for the Charger job and he gets it, the second he gets that job, every single national media person on TV is going to tell him, what a great hire! Oh my God, the Chargers. Even though, again, as we've just pointed out, Vrabel cannot manage the coaching staff. Everybody has to lie all the time and be positive. Tom is up next here on our program on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. What's up, Tom?
Jared, I want to thank you for playing that 1 minute clip, and for a different reason than you may be thinking. As I heard it, now I've heard it one time, it was the way the questions were asked. Zero of the questions, to my recollection, were yes/no questions. They were all open-ended. And it allowed that gentleman to give his responses clearly and concisely. So just a mental exercise to think about, how many questions do you hear asked in press conferences that are yes, no? And then, I mean, if they're going to BS you, they're going to go yes or no or next question or whatever.
No, they're not going to yes or no. If they're going to BS you, they're going to talk for a minute and a half and not say anything.
That's exactly right. So when somebody asks a yes or a no, they're not going to get a yes or a no. They're going to get a bunch of BS. So kudos to the reporters that asked, and the common thread, as I heard it, was open-ended questions. I thought that was a great segment and great insight that coach provided, and I wanted to thank you. I can't believe I'm doing that, but thank you for playing it. It was awesome.
Thank you for your positivity, Tom. I mean, again, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus because I didn't think that those were bad questions, but I didn't think Ian, I didn't think those were great questions.
I thought they were fair.
They're fine.
They were good questions. Yeah, I thought they were good questions.
Yeah, like they're
fine.
fine.
Asked about Kyle Phillips or Mason Kinsey because he was back there returning, and the missed PAT. It's a fair question to ask.
I don't feel like any of these other questions, I don't feel like any of those questions I would have been not expecting or were groundbreaking or.
It's how you deliver the question, though.
Yeah, but I didn't think that was like a, oh my God, wow. Right? Like the Predators game last night. It was a good game. I didn't think it was, oh my God, wow. Like, I guess I'm just saying I wouldn't call into a radio show to talk about how great those questions were. But again, to each their own. And it's the holiday season, so I don't want to get too mad or whatever it may be. Or one texter says I said lame duck, or excuse me, the texter said that I said lame dunk twice. It's lame duck. No duh, moron. I've been saying lame duck. Oh, text line drives me crazy sometimes. One texter into the text line says, should the Titans be interested in Belichick? No. Not interested in Belichick at all. And another texter says, regarding Mike Vrabel's status, it all depends on what the owners say. If they told him to get by with draft picks until 2026 and do the best until then, he is probably safe. That is, save money until stadium costs are clear and go for free agents afterwards. I mean, they can do that. I highly doubt that that's what they did. But, I mean, they're not going to have any fans for that stadium if they decide not to sign any free agents or spend any money or anything like that between now and then. I don't think that that's very likely. I will say this, though. How much do we hear Titan fans that talk about the cap space this year? Oh, the cap. That talk about the cap space this year like, we've got $100 million in cap space. And if the Titans don't spend that money like the Colts have done for years where they are always like number 2 in cap space, and they're like, well, just none of these players were right fit for us. If that happens, you'll be like, hey, Mike and Rand know what they're doing. None of those players were a right fit for us. Trust me, I know. Just like you guys act like, oh, no, the Titans shouldn't have signed Mike McGlinchey. Okay. You're really doing well at tackle this year. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller wants to make sure that every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year, so they're donating $50 in toys to Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase. And giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, which means you can get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems. Or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today at happyhiller.com.
If you are able to go these last 3 games, like how critical is it for you to go out there and play well to roll that into next season?
Yeah, I mean that's one thing we could definitely have on our horizon, at least for these next few weeks, is just to be able to have or build the momentum that we have throughout these past few weeks into next year. And even though we can't make the playoffs, we know we have an opportunity to play spoil for some teams, and we just talked about all the different forms of motivation that we can all kind of source up, whether it's internal, external, about the team, about money, whatever it is. We're just trying to find those things to push us forward, and that being definitely one of the biggest ones of giving us confidence going into next year.
There you go. That's Will Levis. He is questionable for the game with the ankle injury. There's about 19 players or so that are out for the game on Sunday. I don't know how many backups are going to be out there. Quite frankly, I'm not sure I even care that much. It's a meaningless game, and I hear what Levis is saying about, we could, get all this confidence for how we go into next year, and quite frankly, I don't think that really matters any, but that's okay. At least whatever it says to make you feel better, and I believe this. If Will Levis can play, Will Levis probably should play, or at least should try to play. But this is where the Titans have to use their heads. And they have to sit together and say to the doctors, how bad is this ankle sprain? And if he gets rolled into, which is the fear, especially when the interior of your offensive line gets pushed back as much as yours does, if he gets rolled into by a Seahawks team that still is competing for something, then what? Then what happens? Because if you sprain your ankle bad enough and you come back, and I don't know how severe the ankle sprain is, but if his ankle is sprained bad enough that he comes back and plays on the sprained ankle and it gets worse, you can end up breaking your femur. And I don't think you want that. So they got to really decide this here. And I also don't think, for the record, that him sitting out just to make sure that he's okay, I'm not sure that would be a bad thing for his development either. See, what's crazy is that it's good that he got experience this year, or that he's going to get experience. And I do prefer, whether it's, it's a meaningless game, let's not put him behind this offensive line. No, I'd rather prefer him go out there and get those actual reps. But I don't think there's nothing in the idea of, okay, Will Levis sat. Now Will Levis is playing. And then Will Levis, again, goes from playing and having the experience of what it's like under center with the live bullets flying to standing on the sidelines, again, watching from afar. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Now, I'm not benching him. But I'm not putting Will Levis out there where with 2 tackles that can't hold up in an interior of an offensive line that gets pushed backwards, I am not putting Will Levis out there if there's any chance that they can make this any worse. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Texter into the text line says, I want Rand Carthon to use the 49ers blueprint. It all starts with the offensive line and the defensive line, says the texter. How many guards has Kyle Shanahan drafted in the first round? I actually thought about looking that up today, about how many guards have the 49ers drafted in the first round since Kyle Shanahan's been the coach. I'm going to guess, and I just pulled up, I have not clicked it yet, I'm going to guess the answer is 0. Ian, will you take the over or under on 0 guards in the first round for Kyle Shanahan since he's been there in 2017?
0. I'll go 1.
Okay. First round guards. Here you go. I've just pulled it up. No first round pick this past year, and they did not draft a single offensive lineman. No first round pick last year. Their first offensive lineman was Spencer Buford, who was a 4th round pick. In 2021, Trey Lance, first round pick. The year before that, Javon Kinlaw, a defensive tackle, and Brandon Ayuk, a wide receiver, drafted in the first round. The year before that, Nick Bosa, drafted in the first round. The year before that, Mike McGlinchey, a tackle, and Dante Pettis, a wide receiver. I guess Pettis was in the second round. Mike McGlinchey, a tackle, drafted in the first round. The year before that, Solomon Thomas, a defensive end, and Reuben Foster, a linebacker, drafted in the first round.
Dang.
So if you guys want, so the answer is 0. And if you guys want to do things the Kyle Shanahan way, Rand Carthon, at least the first year, has not done that. Now, they've taken tackles in the first round, and they've traded first-round picks for tackles, but they have not drafted a guard in the first round. In fact, this should just make you cry. Again, I don't think Pro Football Focus is really, worth jumping up and down about as far as, I would not allow that in court if I was a judge. But I saw when I was looking at guards, John Feliciano, who was a free agent signing for 1 year at $2.25 million, is one of the highest-rated guards in the NFL this year. 1 year, 2.25. You're paying all three of your interior offensive linemen more money. Unbelievable, right? And yet people tell me that coaching and everything else has nothing to do with it. Or that a 270-pound center. Oh, no. Aaron Brewer, he's good. I had Joe today arguing against me on Robbie and Rex Road about Aaron Brewer. And about how Aaron Brewer's not that bad. Aaron Brewer is horrible. I'm sorry. If you can't see it, then you just don't want to see it. John says, Jared, has anyone ever made a decision or a move that you didn't understand and that ended up being correct? It seems like your baseline is, this doesn't make sense to me, so you're an idiot with no plan unless you show me all of your homework and prove to me that there was thought put into this. Is that a bad thing to ask for? Hey, you drafted an offensive lineman who played tackle in college with the 11th overall draft pick. You said when you drafted him that you were going to play him at multiple positions. So far, you have not done that at all. Could you please explain to me why that is? You gave a 270-pound guard a second-round tender worth $4.3 million when the right of first refusal was $2.6 million. Again, for a team that apparently counts every penny. Can you explain to me why you gave Aaron Brewer a second-round tender? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, does it? Have you noticed that I don't ever complain about decisions that are made, even if they, aren't great slam dunk home runs? That I don't complain about Nick Westbrook-Akine at the veteran minimum. He was a restricted free agent too. They could have tendered him for 2.6. They could have tendered him for 4.3 like they did Aaron Brewer. They didn't. They let him go out into free agency, test the market, and he came back at the veteran minimum. I don't have a problem with that. Makes plenty of sense to me. So when you do something that doesn't make any sense, I believe you should have to explain it. If you're not going to explain it, what is the point of having a press conference? It's like when coaches get up there. Coach, you went for it. At the end of the third quarter, you went for it and didn't get it. What made you want to go for it there? Well, you guys just want to second guess that. Well, what's the point of asking you questions about the game if you aren't going to talk about why you did what you did? And here's what I'll say about everything being a freaking secret. You better win. Because when you win and everything's a secret, you're almost treated like a CIA director, like a savant, like a chess player. They keep everything up their sleeve. When you don't win, you look like an idiot for tendering with a second round a 270-pound center that nobody was going to sign to a multi-year extension off of a 2.6 right of first refusal tender. So am I wrong for asking the Titans, I don't understand this at all. Why'd you do it? Should I just take the, hey, Vrabel said, and so because Vrabel said, then we should all be okay with that? Because I can do that. It probably wouldn't be a very interesting talk show, but I absolutely can do that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. How about the Predators last night? We got to get into that Predators win last night. Boy, I tell you, that was one that I did not expect it. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And, of course, speaking of the Predators, we will have Predators tickets for you to win coming up. And, of course, it's bowl season. And 102.5, 106.3 The Game and 94.9 The Fan is your home for college football bowl games and the college football playoff presented by Twin Peaks and Parman Tractor and Equipment. Tonight at 6 o'clock, tune in for the Gasparilla Bowl as Georgia Tech takes on Central Florida on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. For a list of games carried on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and 94.9 The Fan, hit up our website at thegamenational.com/bowls. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ho, 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 how about them Predators last night? Ian, what'd you think?
Pretty solid.
I mean, that was, like, I watched that game last night, and I was so elated when they won. I honestly was thinking that there was a chance that they were going to go to overtime with Philadelphia, and I was like, I want to see if Forsberg can do it again. Instead, I walked into another room for about a minute, and I came out, and Philip Tomasino had scored again. I was thoroughly impressed with that. And thoroughly impressed with celebrating that it's Christmas time. So be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see the Predators, whom I am back on the bandwagon for, take on the Chicago Blackhawks at Bridgestone Arena Tuesday, January 2nd. Tickets available at NashvillePredators.com/tickets. So I got to tell you, when it came to the Predators this season, I figured they would be good. Like, I figured they would make the playoffs because I felt like they needed a new general manager, and I felt like they needed a new coach, and I felt like they kind of just needed to inject some new blood into the team and the arena and the fan base and everything else, and they did it. Between Andrew Burnett, Barry Trotz, and Ryan O'Reilly, I feel like the Predators put in good new blood, and without, again, David Poile retiring, good for him, John Hines and Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, they kind of got rid of some of the dead weight. Now, we'll get to Duchene in a little bit. But early in the year, I knew that it was going to be a little bit of a process. But early in the year, they had that big road trip, and they got buried on that road trip. And so I'm like, all right, now they come home, and it's time for them to beat some decent teams or some bad teams, whatever, beat them at home, and just kind of get back to sea level, and they got beat. They got beat by Arizona, they got beat by Calgary, and I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a long year. But I was okay with it because I asked for it, right? I asked for them to get a new coach and a new system. I asked for them to rebuild, for them to kind of try to start over, go young. I asked for all of those things. Just like many of you have asked for at least something from Santa. And so I figured, look, we're going to have to just suck it up, embrace the tank. It is what it is. And, it's going to be a tough season around here. And then they had an off day. They didn't play on a Thursday. They played on a Saturday against Chicago, and they beat them. Then they beat Colorado. Then they kept winning and winning and winning and winning and winning and winning. And I tried to stay off the bandwagon as long as I could because I feel like what I'm about to say may actually hurt the club. But I'm back on the bandwagon. And this season has become exactly what I thought it was going to be at the beginning. Now, I'm not going to claim victory or claim that I was right. I'm not going to claim that about this season because, again, I told you guys when I thought early on, oh boy, this thing might go right down the toilet, that we should accept it and be happy with it because they're going in the direction that we wanted them to go. But this is what I thought the Predators were going to be. Last night's game was a freaking grinder. That was the kind of game that bad teams always find a way to lose. It was a tough, physical game. Andrew Burnett makes the choice to go with the extra defenseman, which means, they're going to have two guys on one line, and then Forsberg can hop out there some, and then O'Reilly can hop out there some, and they can kind of mix and match, right? Well, then Yakov-Trenin gets thrown out of the game, and now you're basically rolling three lines. And that Philadelphia team, that is a tough team to play. They were a tough team a couple weeks ago when they came in here, and Philip Forsberg beat them in overtime. And so you got good goaltending last night. You got just grinded out, tough. It wasn't their best game, but sometimes it's good when you go on the road and you don't win your best game. It's good when you don't have your best game and you do win. I guess that's what I should have said. And then Philip Tomasino, one of the young guys that I've said, look, for all these young guys that the Predators have or don't have, I said there's going to be guys that pop, that become really good role players for a long time, that become stars, that become there's going to be a lot of these guys. And then there are going to be guys that don't make it. And I was starting to think that Tomasino might be a guy who wasn't going to make it. Barry Trotz would come on every week and we'd say, what's up with Tomasino? And every time Barry, and this is just how he is, but Barry with that kind of positive attitude would talk about, well, you know, Tomer has the kind of game we like. We just need a little bit more from him. And coach is pushing him. And, you know, by scratching him, it gives him a chance to reset. But coach is focused with him. And I'm like, yeah, I know they want him to be successful, but I just don't know. And then last night, it feels like it kind of clicked a little bit. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that that's going to completely turn around his season, but it might. It might. Like, that could be, again, Barry came on the show Tuesday and said he asked Santa for secondary scoring. Not to say that I expect Tomasino to drop in 26 goals this year, but that kind of performance, like, they really need that. They really could use that. And so last night's game in Philadelphia, physical, tough, you're in the box a lot, they're in the box a lot, you're not playing your best game, your goalie's making some big saves. It's the kind of game that I either expected to go to overtime and it kind of, you know, a 3-on-3 fakakta, odd man rush leads to a goal or a shootout or like or they score at the end just 'cause and you won. And Barry was nervous when he came on the show on Tuesday. I could see it in him. He was nervous about the 3-game stretch that was upcoming with Vancouver, who's very good and put it to the Predators the other night, Philadelphia, who's good, and Dallas, who won last night against Vancouver on a Matt Duchene goal in overtime, and they're tomorrow. And after that performance, I think if I was Barry, I think I would feel better. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Texter says, I like both the coach and general manager, but here you go. You have to give a lot of credit to the old GM for the talent that was brought up from Milwaukee. I love when it says you have to. I don't have to do anything. And I'm not. Again, and David Poyle, you know, retired, and he's in the team's Hall of Fame, and he should be in the team's Hall of Fame. And I'm not here to bitch about David Poyle. But there was a lot of hanging on. And then finally it was like, we're going to see Matt Duchene tomorrow at Bridgestone Arena. And even though he's having a good year for Dallas, I don't miss him. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm sure he's doing great. But I don't miss him. I don't miss let's see if they can get the best out of Duchene. No, there's a new blood in there, thanks to guys like Ryan O'Reilly, who, by the way, is a freaking stud. And when Willie said he went up the tunnel last night, I did not like that at the end of the game. So I don't have to. I don't have to go out there and give credit to the old GM. I mean, again, like we're talking about, man, Tomasino had a good game last night. Could this mean that he can be a part of the lineup? That was a first-round pick. That those guys should be on the team. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Corey Curtis, News 2, going to join us up next on the Titans and where this team finds itself. And what I think is far more interesting off the field than anything that's going to happen in the Seattle game on the field. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there to join me, Chris, and Derek at Teddy's Tavern this Sunday from 9:30 to 11:30 for the NFL pregame. That's right, the award-winning pregame show, where we will break down the Titans' Week 16 matchup. The award-winning pregame show, I think we should call it Inside the Pregame, because it's like inside the NBA. I'm Ernie, and there's Shaq and Charles. But our award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and Beast Unleashed. Stillman and Company on Christmas Eve, I do believe. Tune into MTSU basketball tonight. 93.3 Classic hits. The Blue Raiders are on the road facing Southern Utah. Pre-game at 7, tip-off 7:30. And coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. Corey Curtis, News 2, joins us on the program. I got some guy in the text line that's sitting there saying to me, when I say that, hey, it won't be the worst thing in the world if you dropped him.
I hit the wrong button. Hold on.
Ian. That's okay. Ian goes the whole year without making a single mistake. And on Christmas Eve, Ian goes out there and makes a mistake. It's that getting ready for the holidays, kind of everybody's mind somewhere
All right,
else.
we're back.
Okay. So I got somebody in the text line, because, again, when it comes to Will Levis, he's questionable for the game. And I'm of the belief that, hey, if he can play, great. More reps, the better. But if the doctors are thinking, hey, he may re-injure himself and could break his femur, because if you've got a bad sprained ankle, that's what happens. It's sprained so bad that it breaks the femur. Then he doesn't play on Sunday. And it's not the end of the world to have him watching for a game before he goes back in there. And somebody said, oh, well, if you never play just until everything's perfect, it'll never. I think it's crazy talk. Corey, what do you think about Levis playing on Sunday against the Seahawks? Do you have an opinion one way or another?
I agree with you. I think if he can play, he probably should. I think, if there's a legitimate chance of him, making it worse, like you're talking about breaking your femur, tearing your Achilles, like if this increases the odds of those things happening, then I don't know. Then I think you got to take a hard look at it. But if you can, put 3 pounds of tape on there and send him out there and he can function and play, go play.
Corey, I think it's important that we use this time before the holiday or before Christmas. I guess we're well into the holidays now, to kind of address my own opinions with somebody whose opinion I trust, which is you.
Wow.
You're
Holy
welcome.
cow. Let's do this.
I am ready at the end of the year. If I own this football team, I would clean house. Now, I guess part of this is I would have never hired Ran Carthon. So for me to fire Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel together, that is really not, I never agreed with this nobody's in charge philosophy anyways. So I guess maybe that makes it a little different, but I am not encouraged at all by what I've seen by the construction of this team, the management of this team. I don't really see a plan for this team. And when I hear things like, well, they value guard, center, guard more than they value tackle, and then they give Aaron Brewer $4.3 million, I find them to be incompetent. And so I think with all the money coming up, I think with the draft picks and everything else, and knowing that this is going to be a tear it down and build it back as fast as possible project, I'd rather have other people doing that. I'd rather have the structure of the organization be led by a general manager that I trust. Ran Carthon is not that guy. And a head coach who I think still has their fastball here, and I don't think that's Mike Vrabel. Do you think that is crazy that I feel that way?
Well, I don't think you're crazy. I think you're overreactionary and emotional at times, but I don't think you're crazy. Look, I agree with you that I don't like the nobody's in charge. I think you hire people to do a job. Okay, you hire a general manager to run the personnel of your football team. If you want that to be Mike Vrabel, then make it Mike Vrabel. If you want it to be Ran Carthon, then make it be Ran Carthon. Can they work together? Sure, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to be in charge and be clearly calling the shots. And it's been done both ways. With the head coach calling the shots and with the general manager calling the shots. I lean more. There's more examples of the other way being successful. I think this year they wanted to be still competitive without having a total, tear down rebuild, and they tried fudging their way around it, and it didn't work. They were unable to economically replace guys. And I think beyond that, I think, the depth of the team is what's really suffered. And so when, in the past, when we've seen guys go down and they've been able to replace them, that's been much, much tougher to do. You've got $100 million in cap space. You've got draft picks and draft position. If this is the year that you need to turn the franchise around. So I understand what you're saying, that this is a critical year. I mean, you got to get it right this year. If you don't get it right this next year, then Mike Vrabel's going to be out of a job.
Well, do you believe in them when it comes to Carthon and Vrabel? Because I think, what you said about, well, they tried to, 1 foot in, 1 foot out of rebuilding this team. They tried to fudge it. And I'm like, well, let's talk about fudging, because Andre Dillard sucked. That's not, hey, we tried to get a left tackle on the cheap. The Chiefs got a left tackle on the cheap in Donovan Smith. You got a left tackle who sucks. Like, there is a difference, in my opinion, between those two. So when it comes to Vrabel and Carthon, like, I guess what I'm saying is I don't have any faith in them. What have they done recently that would give you faith in them to continue this?
Well, I mean, they have brought in Will Levis, who can play. They were able to land DeAndre Hopkins in free agency, who can still play. They have been able to bring in some players who've helped the football team. I don't think that you can question that.
See, I do, but I question that. I question both of those moves, and I'll tell you where. Right, like with Levis, I mean, they obviously didn't love Levis, or else they would have drafted him with the 11th overall pick.
Yeah,
so,
I understand what you're saying there. There were questions.
Right,
and
they weren't as sold on him. And then when it came to Hopkins, it wasn't like they went out to go get DeAndre Hopkins. They just, tried to play prices right. They looked at the guy next to him and bid $1 more. And it wasn't like in free agency, they targeted DeAndre Hopkins. It was nobody else wants him, and we'll take him.
See, I disagree. I think DeAndre Hopkins was part of the plan from day one. And I told you that.
Oh, no.
I mean, they could not have gone into this season without DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver.
I'm telling you, they would have. If Odell Beckham, and again, we can play this like if this and this. If Odell Beckham, DeAndre was working on a 1-year deal for $3 million with Kansas City, and he understood that he had to reestablish his value and that Mahomes might help do it. And this is according to Albert Breer, that the second that Odell Beckham signed for $15 million with the Ravens, that blew that up. DeAndre at that point was no longer going to do 1 year, $3 million. And I got to be honest, I can't blame him. Can you?
No, he's a better player than that. I mean, look, if you put him with the Chiefs right now, what kind of numbers would he be putting up?
Exactly. And so my point is the Titans got incredibly lucky that happened. There was no way that was the plan. If the plan was DeAndre, then they would have acquired DeAndre via a trade so that nobody else could have gotten DeAndre.
The way they slow played everything on this, I understand what you're saying. I just disagree with you. I think the head coach and the wide receiver have a long-standing relationship, and they understood that he didn't want to come to minicamp, didn't want to do all that, and they just waited it out until the summer got there, and he came to play. I mean, he got exactly about the amount of money we thought he was going to. There wasn't a big surprise there. So, we can agree to disagree on that one. I cannot imagine them having come into this season with what would have been Burks, NWI, and Phillips.
Chris Moore.
And Chris Moore, yeah.
Who I do like, by the way.
No way. I like Chris Moore, too. Chris Moore's he's a good depth partner. Like, if he's like your fourth or fifth and, playing on special teams, that's a guy that makes you a better football team.
Sure.
I mean, I that's what you're talking about when you're talking about having quality depth on your team at certain positions.
Corey Curtis is with us from News 2. The old man used to say, if you're going to draft a guard in the top 10, he ought to go to the Pro Bowl immediately and right to the Hall of Fame. And Peter Skoronski is not doing that. Now, in fairness to him, he was not a guard whom they drafted. He was a tackle who they've decided to play at guard. But right now, Peter Skoronski does not look the part of the 11th overall pick. I am nervous that this could be Chance Warmack 2.0, and it may not be his fault. It may be I don't know. But how worried are you about Skoronski? Because every time I get worried, these fans go crazy when it comes to me.
Yeah, I know. I like to read on Twitter or X, the fans who disagree with you. I am not as worried about Skoronski being as a bust as you are. Look, he wasn't good last week. There's no doubt about that. I do wonder how much the guy next to him affects him, because he hasn't had strong play next to him.
Sure.
But at the same time, he needs to be a dominant player. Like you're talking about, drafted where he's drafted, with what was said about him coming out and what we believed about him coming out, he needs to be a dominant player. He needs to be the piece that they build around. He needs to be the guy that you can count on every game to go out there and kick butt every game. And so, I think it's fair to wonder about the development and the coaching, especially when you consider the performance of the entire group, right? He's not the only one who hasn't played great. I mean, the whole group struggled and struggled for a few years. This has been a trajectory.
Sure,
right?
but he's the only one that was drafted 11th.
Wait, no, you're right. But he's the only one who's drafted 11th. But you talk about tearing this whole thing down, and do you trust? Do you trust? This is one group where I would say, Mike, what's your plan here? Because this is steadily getting worse. You changed the coach, all right? You drafted him 11th. You moved some pieces around the board, and it wasn't just Andre Dillard who was bad, all right? I mean, that's that. If it was just one player, you could work around that. It's been more than that.
Do you believe that Vrabel's coach – this is another take that I have that I want your opinion on. Yeah. I believe that there is still more – I think right now where everything sits, Vrabel's going to be coming back, or at least the ownership is not going to fire Vrabel on Black Monday. But I do believe there's going to be some arm twisting about this coaching staff, and I do wonder what effect that's going to have on Mike Vrabel. And I think there should be arm twisting about the coaching staff. But I also think the head coach should do a better job of putting together the coaching staff. What do you make of it?
Well, like I've said, I mean, you can reasonably question development at certain spots. We've talked about, Big T. He has consistently developed defensive linemen. No matter who you've given him, they've gotten better. Those players have seemed to grow over time. But, we haven't been able to say that on the offensive line, in particular. And I don't think we've been able to say that particularly, at wide receiver right now, that we haven't seen a lot of growth in that spot, as well. I think the secondary, they just changed coaches this year, but we continue to see that group struggle. Third downs, penalties on third downs. And they've invested. We talk about how much they've invested on the defensive front. They've invested a lot in that secondary, whether it be contracts for Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker, second-round pick on Christian Fulton, third-round pick on Elijah Molden, first-round pick on Caleb Farley, who of course never plays. They have invested a lot, and they have not gotten a return on that investment. And so, they need to look at, that investment at that spot and at especially the offensive line spot, and say, what are we not doing at these two spots where they're holding us back?
Sure. I also think defensive coordinator is probably up for discussion after this past season. Corey Curtis is with us, News 2. What's your Fireball hot take this week?
You know what? It drives me. This isn't a hot take, but it's just, you didn't ask me about it. And people who want the team to lose for a draft pick, and I understand. I do. I understand. But to me, that's a loser mentality. That's a loser mentality because you play to win the game.
What if it's the last game of the year, though, and John Elway's sitting there on the board, and if you lose, you get John Elway?
Well, you know what? Then you get John Elway. I get it. I get it.
So then you root for that to lose, but not like this where there is no, the difference between 9th and 7th and 12th.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but it's just, you got to trust your people to do their jobs, all right? Whether you're picking 6th or you're picking 12th. There are good players there, all right? You got to trust your people.
But there's only one John Elway.
There is only one John Elway. Is John Elway in this draft?
I mean, some people seem to think that Caleb Williams is, but you're not going to get him anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, exactly. I mean, I like Caleb Williams. I'm all about the Bears getting rid of Justin Fields and drafting Caleb Williams.
I'll put it to you like
Absolutely.
this. That last Indianapolis game in 2015 where Mettenberger lost to Josh Freeman, who was signed off the street that week.
Yeah.
I was completely okay with that. In fact, I was rooting for it because the Titans got the number 1 pick, and I thought that it was important to have the number 1 pick, and winning that game didn't mean anything. That being said, I do think that, there is something like, had Mariota been quarterbacking and they had been trying to develop him at that point, that would have been different. So I do think, strategically speaking, losing and being okay with it or rooting for it is one thing. Just blatantly rooting for it like tank, like this is the NBA, I don't agree with.
No, I don't agree with that at all. I just, and believe me, I've been a fan of a lot of bad teams. I've seen them lose enough that I don't need to root for them to lose. And if you don't trust your people to draft good people and then coach them, then you need to change those people out more than you need to root to lose. And again, I understand where people are coming from. I do, but there are good teams that have not drafted first that have still managed to find good players, really good players. And we can spout off a billion examples of that.
Corey Curtis from News 2, as always. Merry Christmas, Corey.
Merry Christmas, Jared. It's been a great year once again. So I know the season hasn't gone the way everybody wants, but I always say enjoy the journey because years like this make you appreciate the other years a lot more.
There you go. Corey Curtis from News 2 joining us as always on the program. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. A former Titan scout writes that the Titans need a plan. And I've already got it. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
younger Danico didn't get an offer from the Colts, and you ended up here. You're in a similar situation. Do you ever think about like contract?
No, I don't think about that stuff. I let it work itself out. That's what I got an agent for. I just come and do my job.
How badly do you want to stay with this team?
Like I said, everything. It's a good fit for me. I mean, I like it here. So, I mean, it's what it is, man.
Danico Autry, boy, I tell you, I even included there where TD was like, younger Danico, so that when you guys heard the cut, you'd be like, oh, it's Danico Autry. Because we so rarely play audio from Danico Autry, because Danico Autry so rarely says anything or does anything that anybody would notice outside of just going out and playing great football. And I was a huge fan of the Danico Autry signing when it happened. In fact, that day, the highlight was Bud Dupree. But I was like, I mean, I like them both, but I really like the Autry signing, only because Autry had kicked her tush so much when he was in Indianapolis. So Blake Bedingfield, a former Titans scout for almost 20 years, writes at paulkaharski.com and is talking about these 3 games and says, quote, these next 3 Titans games are an evaluation of what they currently have on the roster and what they need for the future. The evaluation starts with the team's pending free agents. Do they find a role for Derrick Henry? This should be a serious evaluation of what the offensive plan is for next year and if Henry fits. This should not be an owner decision out of goodwill. Again, the owner saying, we have to have Derrick. The owner should first sit down with the general manager and the head coach and demand a plan for next season. This should not wait until after this season. And what I was thinking about with all of that, about, hey, let's go over all the guys they need to re-sign. And people are, oh, Jared, they got to re-sign Danico Autry. Here's the problem, though, about that. And I actually asked Rand Carthon before the start of the season if they were having any talks with anybody or they were going to extend anybody, because sometimes teams do that right before the start of the season. They announce an extension with somebody, and Autry, for instance, would have been a prime candidate for that. But it's so close now to the offseason and to free agency that if you want any guy on your team back that doesn't have a contract for next year, now Derrick is a special case, and so we'll put him off to the side. But if you want anybody back next year and you don't want them to test the market, you have to overpay. So we'll use Chris Hubbard as an example, right? You gave Chris Hubbard a veteran minimum contract. Well, Chris Hubbard can get that from you on July 22nd, like he did last year. But he would hope that his play would get him a job as a backup for $4 million somewhere else. So they got to take a veteran minimum deal to return that's not guaranteed. And that's kind of the case with every pending free agent. So if it's somebody that's a free agent that you absolutely positively have to have for next season, then you have to overpay a little bit. And the only guy that would fit that bill at all is Danico Autry. And I would let Danico Autry test the market. Now, this is one thing that, again, if you build up goodwill with your players, you can do, which is you can tell your players and tell their agents, hey, go out to the market, find what's out there, and come back to me, and I'll see if I can match it. Vrabel even said that that's what happened with Bill Cowher in Pittsburgh when the New England Patriots made an offer to him, was Bill Cowher said, I can give you the money, but I can't give you that opportunity they're going to give you in New England. You should take it. So with a guy like Autry, who I do think they need on the team next year, because I don't think that they can just find somebody better, I would say, let's see what the market bears out, and then probably pay it. Outside of that, Derrick Henry is a special situation. I'm not sure there's anybody on this team that I really think they need for next year. Maybe Chris Moore. But Brewer, no. Brunskill, no. Fulton, no. Sean Murphy-Bunting, no. Azeez Al-Shaair, no. Again, I'm not saying don't bring those guys back. I don't believe in just burning the bridge to burn the bridge. But what I am saying is I don't think that Azeez Al-Shaair is a priority. that, oh, God, what are we going to do without Azeez? You can go get another Azeez. You can wait 3 days into free agency. You can wait a month into free agency, and you could probably get somebody for 1 year, $3 million that can give you the same stuff Azeez is giving you. Not that Azeez is a bad player, he's a backup. Autry is the only starter on the team outside of Henry, who's in a special category. But when it comes to Autry, Autry's the one guy who I don't think that they can just replace. Everybody else, I think they probably can. You can find another Sean Murphy Bunting. I don't know if you can find another Danico Autry without having to, really luck out on finding that Danico Autry. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. So there is another NFL story that I actually heard about today on Robbie and Retro, and it is apparently a big freaking deal. And I think it's the kind of discussion that we should have right now about a different team, just so that if and when it happens to your team, at least we can discuss if it's fair or not. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Twice Daily. That's right, Twice Daily. You know I love them. 12 Days of Christmas is back at Twice Daily. Get ready for 12 days of discounts and freebies, plus contests to win fun prizes and gift cards too. Download the app and register today. Again, that's the Twice Daily app, and join the loyalty program to unlock special discount savings and so much more. It pays to be a member of Twice Daily's loyalty team. Because, for instance, if the Titans score in the last 2 minutes of either half on Sunday against the Seahawks, you get a free half sub in the app the next day. How sweet is that? Hopefully Santa will deliver for you. That's why I love Twice Daily. Again, Twice Daily is great. They've got everything. They got the made-to-order sandwiches, and they've got, breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's all there at Twice Daily. It's great. It really is a one-stop shop for really kind of anything that you need. I absolutely love Twice Daily. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
Is it fair for the Lions to capitalize on a good season before it's even over, or is that simply the cost of winning? I know a guy I'd like to ask about this. Here he is, Jeff Lesson from WWJ News Radio 950 and 97.1 The Ticket. So where do you stand on this? Is it just a slap in the face for the fans that have supported this team through thick and thin, or is that simply supply and demand?
Well, Shayna, I can see both sides of it. You know, on one side, it's a PR disaster for the Detroit Lions. Think about it. The week before Christmas, some season ticket holders are seeing a 150% increase in their ticket prices for next year. Of course, the other side of it is, hey, you get what you pay for, supply demand.
There you go. That was the CBS station in Detroit. I did not know about this until I heard the Rex rant this morning. But apparently the Lions are jacking up their ticket prices for next year, and they announced it the week of Christmas. I think the example Joe had was some guy pays $5,000 a year for tickets. Next year it's 13. What freaking a-holes the Detroit Lions are. Now, I will say this. It is not DetroitLions.org. It is DetroitLions.com. It is a for-profit business. And I've seen people raise the prices, and all I will say when it comes to raising ticket prices as brazenly as the Lions have, and I have seen that done around here before too, is that just know that when you price out some of those fans, they may never come back. Now, I think the Lions are a fascinating case, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the Lions have not been good for about 1 trillion years. Finally, the Lions have a decent season. I wouldn't call this to be a special season from the outside. They're not San Francisco. But the Lions are having a decent season, and so because of it, people in Detroit are incredibly happy. They've never seen the Lions win anything. So, hey, maybe the Lions are here to stay. But the problem with the Lions is that with Jared Goff at quarterback, there's no guarantee they'll be good next year. In fact, Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, is going to leave this year for a head coaching job, and they'll have to go find another offensive coordinator that works perfectly with those pieces. We saw Mike Vrabel struggle with that when Arthur Smith left, and Ryan Tannehill took a huge step back with Todd Downing. So I don't feel like there's any guarantee that Detroit's going to be good next year. So I think that they're wrong for doing this. Now, if Detroit had drafted the next great superstar at quarterback, the way I'm sure a lot of people felt with Patrick Mahomes after that first year when he won league MVP, or Lamar Jackson in 2019 when he was unanimously the league MVP, then at least I understand the business plan, knowing that you're most likely to be good for a long time. But Jared Goff, not so much. Jared Goff's always been fascinating for me, because I've defended Jared Goff when people think he's a bum. But when people thought in L.A. that Jared Goff was the best quarterback in the league, which people did start to think for a period of time there in 2017, 2018, 2019, I pushed back. Because Goff's not the best quarterback in the league. He's not elite, but he's also not a crap bum, kind of like Tannehill. If they're going to start charging ticket prices in Detroit, a city where I have seen empty seats for years, they better know they're going to be good next year. And they better know they're going to be good the year after that. Because if you take that $5,000 ticket holder and you charge him $13,000 and he says no and he doesn't come back, guess what? If you go down to crapper, he's not going back even for $5,000. So be careful. That's all I'll say. And I'll say that to everybody around here too. If you're going to jack up the prices when the team gets good, just know that if the team gets bad, it's going to be bad. The Titans, I guess, might be in a special spot because they're going to be moving into a new stadium, so the PSLs and everything else. But I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen with those PSLs if they're through the roof and the team sucks. But I saw that story. I heard that story this morning on Robbie and Joe about the Lions. And how about that guy, by the way, that they interviewed? Ian, can we get that cut back with that guy that was being interviewed? I don't care what the woman, that introduces themselves, but what the guy said. This is what I hate.
Well, Shana, I can see both sides of it. On one side, it's a PR disaster for the Detroit Lions. Think about it. The week before Christmas, some season ticket holders are seeing a 150% increase in their ticket prices for next year. Of course, the other side of it is, hey, you get what you pay for, supply demand.
The guy's like, I can see both sides of it. We want to know what you think. That's why they asked you. Everybody knows both sides of it. We know that the consumer doesn't like having the prices jacked up on them, and we know the team wants to make money. No, duh. She found that to be fascinating. I love that. I love guys like that. I call that talking about radio, where instead of telling somebody what you actually think, they just talk about it. Like, oh, yeah, let's talk about the game. Well, the Titans, they're going to have a lot of injured players, but Seattle's Geno Smith, it's going to be an interesting one. Talking about radio. Tell me what you think. Do you think the Lions are shafting their fans, or do you think their fans need to suck it up because they're 31st in the league in season tickets? That's your discussion. That's your choice. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. By the way, if I was the Lions, I wouldn't be jacking them up that high. I'd be careful. Only because Jared Goff's my quarterback and there's no guarantee I'm going to be good next year. So here's my question. And I do not want to sound like the Grinch, but if you're a Titans fan, Christmas has already been ruined this year anyways. So where is the hope coming from? We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, right here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios here on Christmas Eve. I bet everybody's excited about that. So if you're a Titans fan, you know that this is not going to be a December to remember, that none of these games, the last three, matter other than experience to see Will Levis if he plays, which is questionable for this game, but to see how he plays and develops and things like that, and maybe a final hoorah for Derrick Henry at home in the last two games. Who knows if he'll be back. But we all know that the season is over, that there is really nothing to be excited about. And if you just take one look at the Titans injury report, you can tell that, hey, when there's something to play for, some guys push through it a little bit more than when there's not, and it's like, go ahead and rest that hamstring. And that's okay. But as we turn the page to 2024, I do sense a lot of hope. And when I say hope, I mean from you, the fans. Now, I don't want to sound like the Grinch, but I am trying to figure out exactly what it is that gives us such hope for the Titans next year. Now, Will Levis is certainly something that is exciting. And if Will Levis pops, then you've got a franchise quarterback, and now you are on your way. But as Justin Herbert has pointed out in L.A., if you've got morons around the young superstar quarterback, it might not matter much. So I am excited about Levis, but I'm also nervous at the same time. Vince Young was better as a rookie than Will Levis. Mac Jones was better as a rookie than Will Levis. He went to the Pro Bowl, and his team made the playoffs. Both of those guys did not earn second contracts. So is the hope just around the quarterback? What about the rest of the team? Where's the hope on defense? Is there any young player that's on this team that makes us think, man, this team could really do damage next year? Probably not. I hear a lot of fans talk about three things. Levis, $100 million in cap space, and draft choices. Well, first of all, everybody has draft choices unless you choose to give them away. And the Titans have not chosen to give their draft choices away. They almost did for C.J. Stroud, but they didn't. So everybody has draft choices. The reality is, how do you use your draft choices? The Rams have gotten more from their draft class this year than you've gotten from yours, and they didn't even have a first-round pick. In fact, they drafted a guard with their first pick in the second round, 25 picks after Skoronski, and he's playing better than Skoronski. They drafted Puka Nacua in the fifth round, and he looks like the next Cooper Kupp, and they took two players in the third round. One has 6 sacks, the other has 6.5. I hear people tell me, hey, this draft class, we got a franchise quarterback. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So when I think about where the hope comes from, all I can come up with is the idea that all of this was John Robinson's fault, and that these guys, Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, who I think you guys want back, these guys are just there to clean up his mess. It's never that simple in the NFL. And I can't imagine that it's this simple here. So I do wonder with fans, where is the hope for 2024? Where is the hope that when this godforsaken season is over, your schedule was so easy this year, you played the NFC South. Last year, you had to play the NFC East that had 3 teams make the playoffs, and the Giants, the Cowboys, and the Eagles, who also ended up in the Super Bowl. This year, you play the NFC South. The Steelers stink, and they normally don't. You still lost to them. I mean, you've got 3 backup quarterbacks this year, and you lost to them within the division. So where's the hope? Is the hope that Mike Vrabel, who has gone to the mat for bad coaches like Craig Aukerman, is going to look at his coaching staff this year and say, okay, we're going to overhaul the coaching staff, And instead of last year when we got a new offensive coordinator and a new offensive line coach and they were in-house hires, we're going to go outside and get good coaches. I'm not sure I am very excited about that hope. It feels to me like the Titans have one of two choices. The Titans can either do the same thing over again and hope for a different result, or the Titans can make changes. I have no hope because I have no hope that the Titans will make changes. I am resigned to the fact that the Titans are going to give this group a bunch of money and let them use draft picks so that they can draft guards, or I guess draft tackles who are guards and play them at guard, and then turn around and bring in 270-pound centers and things that matter, like skipping out on wide receiver until the very last second, hiring coaches with no NFL experience except for working here that have to coach and fix certain parts. And then this time next year, I will have hope because we'll be having the same conversations except for these guys will be fired. And then the Titans will be able to finally turn it around. I know I'm in the minority right now, but what I've learned over the years is that oftentimes fans want to believe that things will get better. And I am going to be completely honest with you. There's a chance it gets better here. There is a chance that I am wrong about the commission of Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel. I don't think it's a very big chance, but I do think that there is a chance. But I also feel like I've seen enough incompetence after 1 year. And because of that incompetence that we've seen, whether it was the way draft night 1 went down or draft night 2, when the Titans drafted 2 players that honestly aren't bad. And I didn't have any problem with Will Levis coming out of Kentucky, and I would have drafted him with the 11th overall pick. But the way they handled draft night 2, with the general manager begging the media to be positive, yeah, that makes me wonder if you know how big this job is. It's funny because at Louisville, there's no hope in the basketball program. But I'm actually more hopeful right now than I was this time last year because I knew they couldn't fire Kenny Payne after 1 year. They're going to fire Kenny Payne this year. And then Louisville will go get a new basketball coach and we'll be good again. Might take us some time to get there as far as this coach, the next coach, whatever. But one day Louisville will be good again and it won't be with Kenny Payne as the coach. When it comes to the Titans, I see the same level of incompetence. But what happens is a lot of people want to believe and hope that things will be different. They want whatever the positive explanation for that outcome could be to be that case. They want to believe that their guys are smarter, or that their guys have learned their lesson, or that their guys are more equipped to make next season more of a Christmas celebration than this season. And I just don't see it. Yesterday I asked TD, I said, why would I let these guys that butchered the offensive line as bad as they butchered it this offseason, why would I think that they're going to do a better job next year? And I really feel that way. They knew they had to fix the offensive line. And what did they do? They re-signed for more money a 270-pound center that can't snap. They drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick, and he might not be good. They signed a left tackle, again, to be the most valuable member of their offensive line, and he's horrid. But by giving those guys more picks and more money, they're going to go out there and do better? The guys that weren't interested in Mike McGlinchey last year? So I am trying to figure out, where is the hope? Is it that Will Levis is going to be so good like Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow, guys that were picked number 1 overall in the draft, that they will rise above the ineptitudes traditionally of the organizations that they're in? Is it that Mike Vrabel and Ran Carthon learned from their mistakes of last year? Or is it just, we're going to give them a bunch of money? Somebody help me out. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. And I will say this, coming up next, there is one thing that I am not letting go of. And I'm not letting go of it because nobody can answer this question for me. Nobody can answer a question that could solve arguably your biggest problem and your biggest screw up this past year. And nobody's got a good answer for me as to why they shouldn't try it. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Really just going to play him at offensive line to start and see where we go and see where we feel like he can best help the football team, where he can best help himself. We haven't targeted him anywhere. Really, when we've set out to talk about this offseason, we've wanted to identify speed, violence, and versatility, and he checks those boxes. And we'll kind of let that materialize as we work through the offseason and at training camp. And, that's when the offensive line is going to come together. We've talked about that as in training camp. I think that he can, handle the installation. He's been able to handle, more than one position. And if we didn't feel like, he could handle that, then we wouldn't do it. But certainly I wouldn't have a problem, working him at either guard or tackle spot.
Pretty much locked in at guard, at least for right now.
I would say for right now, I'm not, going to get out in front of it too much, but I kind of like where he's at right now and what that looks like, inside. But I wouldn't say that would be off the table. That's just not what we're going to do, tomorrow when you're at practice. So, but I think that could be a possibility potentially.
Why not play Peter at left tackle?
Why not? Because Peter is going to be at left guard, and we think that's going to be a really, really good position for him.
Okay, so Vrabel drafted Skoronski and then said after they drafted Skoronski, we're just going to play him at offensive line, see how he does, and go from there. Which makes sense, right? People thought he was a guard maybe, but he played tackle in college. Not to mention Rashawn Slater, who had the same size as him at the same school and is a Pro Bowl left tackle in L.A. But that's a different discussion, I guess. But we're going to play him at offensive line. We'll figure it out. And I was skeptical of that when I heard it for a couple reasons. Number one, you're going to use the number 11 overall draft choice. You don't know where the guy's going to play. And number two, there's just not enough practice time. There's just not enough time to say, okay, we're going to try you over here, then try you over there. They only wear the pads like once a week during training camp. There's 3 preseason games. Like, how are they going to be able to figure that out? But again, let's see where it goes. Then, hey, are you going to move Peter around some? Sure, we'll move him around. Yeah. Then training camp, well, he's going to start at guard, but we're not ruling out the idea of moving him to tackle. Then in the middle of the season, when you clearly don't have a left tackle, well, we're not going to play Peter at left tackle because Peter's a left guard. By the way, Peter is not playing well enough at left guard. I'm tired of all the excuse making about, well, he had an appendectomy. I'm sorry. If you can't return from something 4 months ago, we got bigger problems. Everybody has injuries, and an appendectomy is not overly invasive. It is something people recover from. He should be fine by now. Well, he's not getting any help from his left tackle. He's not getting any help from his center. Well, then why not move him to left tackle? So here's my question that I have yet to get a good answer on. The Tennessee Titans have only tried Peter Skoronski, again, who was a first-team All-American left tackle last year. They have only tried him at left guard. The reason why they plugged him in at left guard is because they knew Andre Dillard was going to be their left tackle. Now, we know Andre Dillard can't play left tackle, but at that point in time that they decided Peter was going to play left guard, they knew Andre Dillard was their left tackle. So basically, the Titans know that Peter Skoronski is a left guard and not a left tackle. But how can we trust them to know that if the basis of what they knew was that they knew Andre Dillard was going to play left tackle when clearly they knew that was wrong? Like, we all know, including them, we all know that what they knew then is wrong. And it's okay to admit that you're wrong. Vrabel doesn't do it very often. In fact, I can't really remember the last time he did. We were talking about it at the Preds game the other day. I came up with 2019 against Atlanta was the last time Vrabel got up at a microphone and said, I screwed that up. But if the basis is we know Peter's a good guard or we know Peter's a better guard than a tackle, shouldn't you reconsider that maybe you're wrong? Like maybe Peter might be a better tackle? And I was looking at some of these numbers that Mike Herndon pulled up, which are where all the 23 drafted tackles have come from. This is paulgarski.com. 13 first-round picks, 5 second-round picks, 1 third-round pick, 1 fourth-round pick, and 2 seventh-round picks, shockingly. And so the guy that's currently playing left tackle for the Titans, Jalen Duncan, I can promise you, is a worse left tackle than Peter Skoronski. And not only that, for all the draft guru said Skoronski would be a good guard, I've got Dane Brugler's draft guide, The Beast, that comes out in The Athletic every year. It says Jalen Duncan should play guard too, as did Blake Bedingfield, a former Titan scout who works for PaulKaharski.com, and he thinks he should be a guard. So why not entertain the idea that Skoronski can play left tackle? Because the great left tackles almost never get to free agency, right? Orlando Brown Jr. got to free agency, but he's not a great left tackle. And Cincinnati had to pay him like a great left tackle in order to get him. The great ones don't get there. Trent Williams got traded. Teron Armstead had a hole in his arm and is never healthy. But if Peter can play left tackle, then haven't you just immediately knocked out probably the biggest need of your offseason? You can get guards in the third round like you did with Nate Davis. You can get guards in free agency. I don't understand why there is such a prohibition on the idea of the 11th overall pick, who is not playing very well at guard right now, playing tackle. And Vrabel does not have the credibility, nor does Jason Hodeling, his non-experienced offensive line coach. Neither of those guys have the experience to get up there, in my opinion, and be credible enough to say, we know this guy is a better left guard than a left tackle. How would you know? You've never tried it. If Mike Munchak got up there and said it, that's a different story. If Bill Parcells got up there and said it, that's a different story. But Mike Vrabel is not Bill Parcells. So somebody please explain to me. It's like the idea, well, actually, you know what's really important to them is guard, center, guard. So then why did they go cheap at right guard, and why did they go skinny at center? They've got a backup at center and a backup at right guard. So they got a left guard, center, guard is so important to this team. They got a tackle at guard, at left guard. They've got an undersized backup at center, and they've got an old injured backup at right guard. In fact, this is what I would do if I were the Titans, is I would move for the rest of the season Peter Skoronski to left tackle, and I'd put Calvin Throckmorton at left guard. Because Calvin Throckmorton did start for the Carolina Panthers and does have starting experience in the NFL. And so through 3 games, if I can see him play left guard and he plays it well and Skoronski plays tackle well, which I'm not sold on, but again, I want to see it, then maybe I could just maybe have my left tackle and left guard. Just maybe. I can promise you Jalen Duncan will not be starting for this team next year. And if Jalen Duncan is starting for this team next year, everybody's getting fired probably before the year's over. So somebody please give me a real reason. I don't get it. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. Let's go to Kelly, who's been waiting patiently and is up next. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Kelly?
Hey, Jared, my point goes directly to what you're saying. If I'm Derrick Henry next year, I don't come back to the Titans. I don't care how much money they offer me because I don't trust their decision-making on the line. They can't put the players in the best positions they're going to be in, and I don't trust their decision-making on even getting players on the free agency or even in the draft because, as you pointed out, they drafted guard at 11.
Unbelievable.
So if I'm Derrick Henry, I know and I can expect your number, whatever you get next year is, probably the same results as this year. So I'm willing to take a veteran minimum, whatever it is, to go to Buffalo, to go to Baltimore, where I can probably get a ring, and I know I will not get it in Tennessee.
So that is Derrick's that is his prerogative. Thank you, Kelly. That is his prerogative, right? Like, I don't know what Derrick Henry wants. I asked Derrick Henry around the trade deadline, do you want to go to a team that you can win a Super Bowl on? And he said, well, I'm here. But Derrick usually keeps his thoughts and his feelings to himself. So if Derrick thinks, you know what, these guys are morons and this line in front of me sucks, I just let me go live out my golden years somewhere else, I would not blame him for that. But I'm not going to tell you what, Derrick should do because, again, that's his choice. And I don't even know if they want him back. I mean, they tried to shop him in the offseason. They really didn't want Kevin Byard back. Their actions proved it. So I don't know if they want Derek back or not. I would agree with you, though. I have no faith in them getting the offensive line straight. I have no faith. Ian, can we get that Jason Hodeling clip from Paul? Can we get that right here? I love this so much. This is the offensive line coach of the Titans. Again, the offensive line stinks, and everybody saw it, and everybody watched the game, and everybody knew what was bad. And this is old Hodeling up there talking about the improvement that the group's made.
How about the personal improvement, individual improvements out of them?
Yeah, I think there's been improvement from some guys, individually. There's some numbers that stats are one thing and all those things. But as far as individual improvement, I think there's been some individual improvement for the guys as a whole, the whole group.
Oh, it's been a lot of improvement for the whole group. Did you watch the game Sunday? 615-737-1025 to your phones. Plus, I have a Fireball hot take. This is not the end of the year Fireball hot take because we will have a show on Friday, but this is my holiday Fireball hot take. We'll do that coming up next. And you do not want to hear this as a Titan fan. And I don't even think the Titans think this is going to happen, but I'm just going to tell you, this is going to, I just see it now. I'm like Miss Cleo. Just call me now. We'll do that next here on the program. Fireball whiskey. That's right. You know I love Fireball cinnamon whiskey. It goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There is no better way to ignite the holiday and ignite the new year than to do so with ice-cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. I have spent many a New Year's Eve, and will probably spend this New Year's Eve doing the same thing, toasting Fireball as the ball drops to celebrate a new year. Let's make 2024 our year, and let's do it with Fireball. Fireball whiskey, ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball cinnamon whiskey.
The offensive line has struggled blocking all season long. It's not a new problem. We experienced that last year. Why wasn't there more done in the offseason to address that position group?
Well, I would disagree that they've struggled. They've struggled on third down, hasn't been our best.
Where do you feel like this offseason maybe you and Rand maybe miscalculated on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think there's been too much said, about that, particular spot. I mean, I think that, Rand and I and Chad and A-Rob and the coaching staff, we'll focus on, personnel and player acquisition when we get there. Right now it's focusing on, getting a meeting that has the corrections and, moving forward here to Jacksonville and, what we have.
Understanding that guys getting hurt is part of it. Is there any sense of organizational guilt for what was assembled to be in front of your two quarterbacks, that they've both gotten hurt?
Nobody likes to see any player get hurt, and the responsibility to protect the guy with the ball, whether that's the quarterback, the running back, the receiver, kickers. So we have to do a better job of protecting all of them.
How about the level beyond that in terms of rosters?
We have to do everything that we can to continue to protect the guy with the football.
When you talk about the offensive line and are asked about the offseason, you kind of always pivot every time to worried about the next game, or Paul asked yesterday about the offensive line and just talked about protecting as opposed to what happened in the offseason. Do you think that is the accountability for the fans about what happened with the offensive line this year, that kind of dodging a little bit?
No.
Vrabel was not dodging accountability for the offensive line. Now, it was not a very good question asked by me. But now, I have a fireball hot take before we get to your phones. I don't think the Titans are planning for this. I don't think the Titans are expecting this. But I think this is what's going to happen. Are you ready for it? Ian, how many new offensive linemen do you think the Titans need to get in the offseason?
Well, they had, 4 to 5 this past year, and they'll probably have another 4 to 5.
So they got 3, right? No, they got 2. Well, I guess, do we count Hubbard because that was because PT got suspended?
I guess you kind of have to count Hubbard as new, right?
Okay, so then that's 4, because Skoronski, I guess, is 1, and then Dillard and Brunskill.
Yeah, I guess Brewer was in a new position, and then Hubbard. Yeah.
So how many new linemen, again, do you think they'll have to get?
They'll probably have to get 3.
So right now, Peter Skoronski is the only guy that I think right now really, truly belongs on an NFL offensive line. And even with Skoronski, I have my issues. My issue with Skoronski is more so where he was picked than it is whether or not he belongs in the NFL. He absolutely belongs in the NFL. And it's about where they're playing him, because I'm not sure that's his best position. And I also think that his best position might be the best position on the line. But again, that's a different discussion for last segment. Now, here's the hot take. I think Dylan Radunz is going to be the right tackle of the Tennessee Titans in 2024. And I don't think where we sit today that the Titans think Dylan Radunz will be their right tackle next year. When they have their organizational meetings, they will sit down and hash out what their plan is for next year, and it will not include Dylan Radunz at right tackle. Then they will go into free agency, and I'm sure they will sign some linemen just like they signed some crap bums this year. They'll sign some linemen, and it'll go from there, and then they'll draft some linemen, and they'll have a relatively new-looking offensive line. And I don't think that they will anticipate that Dylan Radunz will start. I think they'll look at Dylan Radunz the same way they looked at him this year, which is, he's a hard worker we like, and he can play some guard and he can play some tackle. That's what they will look at. But because they cannot evaluate the offensive line and they cannot coach the offensive line, they will find themselves in a position where Dylan Radunz ends up being their best option at right tackle for next year. And it may not be week 1. But by about week 5, expect Dylan Radunz to be the right tackle of the Tennessee Titans for the 2024 season. And I'm going to tell you why. Because offensive line stuff takes time in the NFL. They do not practice anymore on the offensive line. They barely wear pads. And again, they don't thump the way that they used to. There's 3 preseason games instead of 4. And so the Titans are either going to add some free agent, but they're not going to pay top of the market money for a Mike McGlinchey like last year. And so they're going to add, some Scarbini, and it'll take that guy some time. Or they'll draft the tackle in the first round, and they'll say, this will be our guy. But if they do that, Radens is going to be better than that guy right away because Radens has experience in the NFL. The secret to what's going on right now is, in spite of all the losing and all the false starts, Dylan Radens is getting better. Now, I don't mean that means that Dylan Radens is good, because better from absolute horse crap to where he is now is still not good. But he is getting better. And why is that? Because he's getting reps. The only time NFL linemen can practice is in the games. That's the only time that they have. So Radens is getting practice every Sunday. And he's getting better. So they'll put that new guy in at right tackle next year, and he won't have the practice, and Radens will either outplay him or the guy will get hurt. And Dylan Radens, just like he's been this year, Dylan Radens will be your primary right tackle in 2024. Just telling you that right now. 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Boy, John Michael is mad on the text line, Ian.
About what?
John Michael says, give Rand a shot. He had no cap to work with last year. Ian, where are we going with this?
Well, I know you think the cap is fake.
Well, I just explain to me. Well, we'll finish out John Michael's text, and then we'll get to that. Give Rand a shot. He had no cap space to work with. This year they are going into the offseason with the most cap space in the league. And I don't want to hear about how the cap isn't real. They kicked the can so far down the road on Tannehill, they can't just pay him off. Too much money to flip at once. And that was about 30 minutes ago. And then John Michael texted in just now, all caps. They didn't have the cap to get a good offensive line. Somebody explain to me how all the salary cap websites, all the tracking sites that tell you who has cap space and who doesn't and everything else, they all said the Denver Broncos had less cap money than you did. That is not a question. That is a fact. That's not my opinion. That is a fact. The Denver Broncos, entering free agency last year, had less cap money than you. How did they sign a top-of-the-market guard and a top-of-the-market tackle? Can somebody explain that to me? John Michael? Denver, if we're going to play by your rules, and say that the cap is real, I'm like an American League team in a National League park 5 years ago. If I'm going to play by your rules and say the cap's real, how could Denver have less cap space and you not be able to afford offensive linemen, but Denver be able to go top of the market at right guard and right tackle?
Did they have more contracts to restructure?
Denver?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I will tell you this, though.
I just wonder, were the Titans running out of contracts to restructure?
No, the Titans weren't running out of contracts to restructure. They could have restructured Tannehill's. They could have restructured Henry's. They did restructure Byard's. They did restructure Landry.
Well, that's not going to help you very much. I mean, it might have given you some extra cap space this year, but then what for next year? Then you have to continue, because at some point, those players aren't worth the value that you're paying them with your number, right? That's the problem what happened with Byard.
Well, Deshaun Watson's cap number.
Because they kicked it, right?
Well, it doesn't matter though. That's all just phony baloney jargon. That doesn't matter.
But then you could have restructured Byard.
Is the same.
But you could restructure Byard's contract.
I mean, Byard took a pay cut and restructured.
So it was a double whammy. I don't know.
You're wrong. Everybody is wrong. Who do you think makes more money, Russell Wilson or Ryan Tannehill?
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson makes $49 million a year. Why is Ryan Tannehill's cap hit significantly higher than Russell Wilson's?
Because they restructured his
They
deal.
redid the contract.
That's right.
That's all you have to do. You can redo every contract. You can redo them until the end of time.
But then you have to pay them the money in front, correct?
Yeah, all it is it's just moving the money to you get the money.
But you don't want to do that for some
year.
players.
Well, but it doesn't matter. The money guarantees after the first game anyways. So, if you're a veteran player and like use Tannehill for an example, they can't cut Tannehill and save 3 games worth of money on Tannehill. His contract's guaranteed for this year now.
But, but if you want to, for this year, but if you were to restructure, don't you move a bunch of his backloaded money forward?
Well, he doesn't have a contract for next year.
Yeah. So I guess
what
there
you
was
would be
really
doing
no
is you'd be creating
restructuring.
void years, and then by creating void years, it would, again, lower the cap hit, and then, again, it all accelerates into 1 year, but you can it's
So
all
you're
bull
paying
crap.
him money to really not play for you.
You're not paying him any money.
But what about all the money you've restructured?
So that is on, quote unquote, on the cap, but then you could just restructure somebody else.
But at some point, you run out of contracts to restructure, don't you?
The Saints haven't. I mean, don't we start every year with the Saints with like minus $70 million?
Well, they're not really winning.
It doesn't matter. The question is, can they fit the players? The reason why they're not winning is because Drew Brees retired, and their coach is a bozo.
Well, they went and spent money for a new quarterback. And
Right.
They just picked the wrong one.
Right, because the cap's fake. So the cap doesn't make up for your bad decisions, right? Like the cap doesn't give the Broncos a do-over on Russell Wilson, but it also doesn't stop them from adding players around Russell Wilson. That's the whole point. Again, like when you keep telling me, New Orleans isn't any good. It doesn't matter. Like that's not why Derek Carr sucks. Derek Carr sucks because Derek Carr sucks. He doesn't suck because New Orleans had cap problems. They gave him a $100 million contract. The Jets have $9 million. I heard somebody say this yesterday. The Jets have $9 million in cap space for next year. You think they're not going to add $9 million in players? I also saw that somebody on Twitter said the Chargers have to cut Joey Bosa. There's no way with their cap situation the way it is, there's no way they're not going to cut Joey Bosa. Dude, they're not going to cut Joey Bosa. I can promise you, Joey Bosa will be on the Chargers next year. If the salary cap was real, then every team that had a quarterback wouldn't be able to extend that quarterback every year. Every team that's wanted a quarterback. Atlanta blamed the cap for why they sucked 2 years ago. And the reason why they got rid of Matt Ryan, they said, was because of the cap. It was because they were chasing Deshaun Watson. That's why. And Matt Ryan got mad. They went back to Matt Ryan after Deshaun went to Cleveland. And they said, hey, everything good? And he said, no, I want to go to Indy. That's what happened. And so this idea that it's like, oh, no, you can't kick the can down the road until forever, that's literally what these teams are doing. Every single one of them. And every year, I'm told about unmovable cap hits and dead cap money, and then all of a sudden, Jared Goff, the most guaranteed money in the history of the NFL, gets traded. It happens every year. There's this cap situation is horrendous, and then all of a sudden, on March 10th, couple of guys sign restructures, extensions, whatever, and they've got the money. Every year. New Orleans will sign free agents this year, trust me. Oh, my goodness. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Well, one texter said, what happened to getting to the calls? You're right. I just got mad about that one text. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. And now I promise we'll go right back to your phones, 1025-1063 The Game.
in terms of the way Skoronski and Duncan played on Sunday, what do you say to those guys to kind of reel them back in and get them ready for this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's, show them the things that they did well, show them the things that we need to improve on, and make sure that they understand that we've got another good opponent coming in here and on, however many days from now, 3-4 days. So it's whether it was a perceived great game or perceived, not so good game, whatever it may be, like we got another opponent coming in the game. So we got to make sure that we're able to make the strides and make the corrections and improve on the things that we did well on, continue to enhance those, and get ready to go play another team here in a few days.
It was a perceived bad game for Duncan and Skoronski. That was Tim Kelly yesterday. I have no idea what that means. Is he trying to argue it wasn't a bad game? If he's trying to argue it wasn't a bad game, I would tell him, go watch tape. Just watch TV copy. That'll be enough. You don't even need to watch the actual film. You'll be fine. I did promise phone, 615-737-1025 here on the show. John says, if the Titans put Skoronski at tackle for the last 3 games and he gets Tannehill or Willis killed, then will you admit you were wrong and Vrabel was right, or will you just use that as proof that they shouldn't have picked him? Well, if they put him at tackle and he's not good at tackle, and they've played him at guard and he's not good at guard, and he was the 11th overall pick in a draft, again, that is a more valuable pick than what you traded to the Eagles for A.J. Brown, then I would turn around and say that it was a bad pick. But I don't have to worry about that. You know why? Because they're not going to play Skoronski at left tackle. Because they know Jason Houdeling and his 2 years of NFL experience as Keith Carter's assistant on this as his assistant on this Titans coaching staff, he knows. Tim Kelly, who said it was only a perceived bad game for Duncan and Skoronski on Sunday, he knows. Mike Vrabel knows. One texter says, is it possible at all that they've been trying Skoronski at left tackle in practice or in one-on-ones? They don't practice anymore. They don't wear pads at practice. So the idea of, hey, we're going to duke it out in practice, that doesn't happen in the NFL. On Wednesday, first of all, the entire team hasn't practiced this week. But what happens in the NFL is on Wednesday, I think they go over first and second down. So on one field, it's like all the plays that you're going to run on first and second down, your offense runs. And on another field, all the plays that your defense will run against their offense, they work on. Then I believe Thursday is red zone and Friday is third down, or it's the other way. I don't know. Those are how they break up the 3 days. There is no day where it's like, all right, you're going to get 10 reps with the first team and then you're going to get 10 reps with the first team. That is not how they practice in the NFL. So, no, it is not feasible that they have been working Skoronski out at tackle in practice. And in all the preseason practices, that's where you would see something like that. If they were going to try to change it up a little bit, Skoronski never played tackle. Skoronski has only played one position with the Titans. And again, it is because they know. One texter says, not only do I not trust Vrabel to build an offensive line, I also don't trust him to develop a quarterback. He doesn't even seem to value offense. I don't think Vrabel doesn't value offense. I just think he doesn't talk about valuing offense. And then, they don't score a bunch of points, and he's a defensive coach. So it's like, he doesn't care about offense. I mean, I think he cares about offense. I just don't think he knows how to do it. Like I had a house where there was like a carbon monoxide leak outside of it one time. Carbon monoxide detectors kept going off. And for the life of us, we could not figure out where that carbon monoxide leak was. We're calling out all kinds of people to the house. Well, it doesn't mean that I didn't value a carbon monoxide leak, because I did. But I just didn't know how to fix it. And it feels like that might be the case when it comes to Mike Vrabel and trying to fix the offensive line or the quarterback play or anything else. One texter says the Titans have a poor owner when we talk about the salary cap and how it's fake and how the Titans can do whatever they want. So I am going to defend her here for a second. I believe for the last 2 years, the Titans were in the top 10 in cash spent in the NFL, which meant that they were spending. Now the Rams are behind you as well in terms of cash spent. What that tells me is I think there's probably like rolling budgets where it's like, hey, here's how much money we have to spend this year, and this year. And if we take money for this season because we have 91 players, we're taking money out of future seasons. I think there might be some of that. Because I know the Rams owner's not cheap. I know he's rich. But I do think there's probably, as a businessman, a sense of, hey, we need to reset this a little bit. But I don't want to hear the excuses. I mean, you can't take $1.2 billion of our money and then all of a sudden say, well, spent too much money, can't exactly this, that, whatever it may be. Chad Withrow joins us, as always, from Outkick. We will do that next. Stillman and Company right here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Be sure to play Silly Underdog Picks today. You can go online to theGameNashville.com or the 102.5 The Game app. And Silly Underdog Picks is presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Ho, 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 Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ian, I got a headline for you. This is from the Titans Wire. They are like an aggregate service for USA Today.
Okay.
Titans 2024 cap space projection goes down, but is still tops in the NFL.
Got to restructure some more contracts.
Apparently, the cap space was lowered. It's apparently now $75.5 million.
Who needs a void year? Who needs a void year? Come on down.
Apparently, A.J. Brown's cap number last year was $5.6 million, $8.5 million, $12.4 million, and then he's got massive cap hits, which I'm sure they'll restructure as they write in the thing. Thing's totally fake. Chad Withrow joins us from Outkick, as he always does on a Friday. First of all, Merry Christmas to you, Chad. Let's start with this. I have no hope for the Titans in the future. I mean, it's exciting that they've got a young quarterback in Levis who might make it, he might not. I think fans are getting too excited too quickly saying, franchise quarterback. But I thought losing to the JV Texans on Sunday was a significant blow. I do not trust the coach. I do not trust the coaching staff. And I do not trust the general manager. Should I be as down on the Titans, knowing that the coach and the general manager are probably coming back as I am?
Well, I think if you believed Mike Vrabel and everyone with that team before the season, that they thought they were going to be competitive for a championship and competitive in the division, if you actually believe that to be the case, then you have every right to be fully disappointed, right, in this product and what's happened. I never really believed that. I thought they were in denial about what they needed to do and how they needed to change things last offseason and move forward in a different direction. And they tried to hang on one too many years. And now here we are with a team that's just playing out the string with the one bright spot was you could continue to see your future quarterback that you think at least play a few more games. But now he can't stay healthy because the offensive line is such a train wreck also. I'm with you on Will Levis. I think he's shown enough positive signs that I believe he is the guy next year, and I want to see more from him. But I'm also not ready to crown him some 10 to 15-year franchise quarterback yet, based on a lot of the negative things that I've seen with Will Levis. So the Titans are just sort of in this weird limbo right now because I don't think they've had definitive direction about what they're doing and who they are and who they should be moving forward. So if you're a fan that believes what Mike Vrabel says and what Rand Carthon says before the season, you got every right to be mad. I think for most people that understood what this roster was and that they needed to face a rebuild, even though they were unwilling to face it, I don't think they're that surprised right now. And I think it's a little extreme to say, no faith in the Titans moving forward. They got a chance this offseason to prove they can get this thing headed back in the right direction. But I mean, I get it. There's not a lot of signs that we know of that Rand Carthon is up to the task or going to be able to do that. And Mike Vrabel's trajectory right now is really bad. There's no doubt about it.
So here's where I would say I disagree with that, is the idea that, they tried to run it back one too many times, which I know a lot of people thought. I don't think it's that they tried to run it back. I think it's that they tried to run it back with Andre Dillard. And that's where I don't have any faith. Like, they knew they had to fix the offensive line. And how did they fix it? With a crap bum in Andre Dillard, a 270-pound center, a backup right guard, and they drafted a left tackle 11th overall to play left guard. I mean, to me, that's the incompetence. It's not that they needed to fix the line. I agree with that. It's that they needed to do a better job. And, Chad, that is why I don't have any faith going into this offseason. I'm just giving them more money to screw up even more.
No, I'm with you. Look, they failed addressing the offensive line. I'm telling you what I thought about this team when I knew what roster they had playing this season and who was there, right? And I still think a lot of people thought it was going to be better, even with that roster. That was my reaction to what they did this offseason, still claiming that they were going to be a competitive team and the offensive line was going to be improved and that they could be a team that was going to be competitive for the AFC South. And I just didn't see that with that roster. But, I mean, you've hit on something here. The failure at offensive line, to me, is the biggest part of all of this. If Titans fans want to be mad about anything, it is the combined failure of going back to John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, offensive line coaches that have come and gone, Rand Carthon, everyone involved. I do not understand Because I go back to the days of Mike Munchak, where you could get a guy in the 5th round, and that guy was going to be a serviceable offensive guard for 10 years for you because he knew what he wanted and he knew how to develop them. I don't think the Titans understand how to evaluate talent at offensive line. I really don't. And I don't know if that's just a single scout issue that you need to almost assign a scout that knows offensive line. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's GM, past, present, but it's clearly a big issue. And they've proven to no one that they have any idea how to evaluate an offensive line. And if someone's going to throw Peter Skoronski back at me, okay, great. What is Peter Skoronski? What do we know about him? That he's sometimes okay on the worst offensive line in the NFL? I mean, okay, awesome. That was your first round draft pick last year. So
the 11th pick.
That's the biggest failure.
I mean, the 11th pick. Like, even talking about it drives me crazy, and I know that that's my job, and I get it, but it drives me nuts. Here's the other part, is that I don't know. Like, Vrabel will change the coaching staff some, whatever. I don't know that Vrabel will be able to find good coaches to put on this coaching staff. And I understand the idea of only wanting coaches that he has a working relationship with, because it's hard to like invest in these new dudes that I don't know and they don't know me and everything else. He doesn't have the experience because he wasn't an NFL coach very long to know guys in different spots. And that worries me that Vrabel has no idea. This offensive line coach they have this year, I mean, has no resume. I mean, he's been in the NFL for 2 years. I don't think Vrabel can pull the trust me on the coaching staff card with us this upcoming offseason, and I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I don't think you nailed it. The lack of time in the NFL as a coach reduces the network that you have as a coach. And sometimes you do need to get lucky. You know, I think about all those Shanahan guys, and some of them were familiar relationships and all that. I get it. But sometimes you do take a chance on someone, and it just turns out they're really good, and they make you look like a genius when you bring that guy on staff, right? So some of it may be Vrabel's a little bit unlucky with offensive line coach and offensive line play. But I think a lot of it may be the fact that his network isn't that large with coaches, and that could be an issue. The biggest thing, though, to me, and I think we're going to see this with Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, is you've got to adapt and you've got to change your opinion, and you can't be overly stubborn. And I believe Mike Vrabel loves to win more than he loves to be right. So my hope for the Titans and Mike Vrabel is that he follows that North Star of wanting to win and do what is ever necessary to win, as opposed to just wanting to be the smartest guy in the room and wanting to be right on everything. Because if he wants to win, it's going to be a long, hard look in the mirror this offseason, and changes have to be made. Not just changes on the staff, not just changes in how they evaluate players, changes in how he approaches things. You know, there's a good stubborn in doing things you know are right and doing them the right way and sticking with that even when the results aren't great at times. And there's a bad stubborn of thinking you got things figured out when you really don't.
Yeah.
And everyone who's ever watched a football game can watch the Titans offensive line and realize they don't have that figured out. And he has got to address that. But the first part of that is the self-realization that, hey, I need help here. We need to think differently about who we're bringing in. We need to look at this differently. To me, that's step number one. And again, I think Mike Vrabel's a smart guy. I think Mike Vrabel likes to be right, but I think Mike Vrabel likes to win more than he likes to be right. So I do think that he will change that this offseason one way or another.
One thing that I could find fascinating, Chad Withrow, is that I don't think this Rand and Vrabel story, I don't think that's over. And so I think about it from both sides, right? If I'm Rand and I ride Mike, I hitch my wagon to Mike Vrabel, I might be fired next year, and I'm probably not getting another job in the NFL. And if I'm Mike Vrabel, like, they're going to want me to change the coaching staff. I'm going to enter next year on the hot seat. There's going to be about 9 jobs probably in the NFL that are open. There are not 9 candidates to fill those head coaching jobs. I could go get a 5-year contract somewhere else, maybe with Justin Herbert as my quarterback without Rand Carthon as a part of this operation. I don't think that's over between them, right? Like, I could see Rand going to the owner being like, hey, if he really doesn't think Vrabel's up to it, hey, look, I know you want us to work together, but I'm not sure I can work with this guy. And I can see Vrabel trying to get out before they get him What do you think?
That's a possibility. I really think, just going back to the John Robinson decision, I really like the chance. If we're just playing probability and looking at what could be or what could happen, I like the chances of John Robinson improving and working better with Vrabel the way they had a good working relationship for a while, and fixing things with Vrabel as opposed to hiring a first-time GM. Rand Carthon aside, right? Firing John Robinson and then hiring a first-time GM when you know John Robinson the way that you did. And I'm not sitting here not casting blame on John Robinson. We all know about the failed first-round draft picks and the moves he made that didn't work out, right? I'm just saying, if I'm looking at what's the best chance for future success, it's the guy that laid the groundwork for the beginning of the success, figuring it out, coming back with Mike Vrabel, with his input, and figuring out a way to piece it all back together. I think that's where your initial question comes from. And that type of doubt, I understand. In that, what can we say about Rand Carthon? Really not much. Not a great first offseason. In fact, I would say bad. Has not been a GM before. So if Titans fans want to blindly believe that everything's going to work out, I mean, I like hope. I like that too. But all I can go by is track record. And it's a bad start, right? He's not done this that long, and it's a bad start. So that's all I can reasonably say about the Titans right now. So, yeah, it could absolutely get better. He is new at this, and he should only improve from here. And I think Mike Vrabel has shown that he can be a success, and he could be a success again with this team. But if you're just banking on this and getting mad at someone like you for saying it, or banking on, oh, you don't know what you're talking about and everything's going to be just fine and you're overreacting, I would tell that person to show me the proof of what they've seen in Rand Carthon's career to make me believe that he's going to right the ship and figure it out. He may do it, and the Titans may get lucky, and he may be really good at it, and I hope that's the case, but no one knows.
Chad Withrow's with us from Outkick. The hot seat is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Chad Withrow is with us from Outkick. Chad, are you ready for the hot seat?
I was born ready for the hot seat, Jared. Let's do this. Fire away.
Okay, Ian, keep us on time with the bell. Number one, Florida State has decided that they are going to try to leave the ACC. The grant of rights lasts through 2036, and their lawyers say it could cost them $570 million to leave the ACC. Will they be successful?
So I'm sympathetic to Florida State. I feel like they were a righteous victim in all this with the College Football Selection Committee. I think they should have been in. I think they got screwed by the committee. I believe all those things. But I do believe that now a righteous victim has become the equivalent of a deranged stage mom whose daughter didn't get the lead in the school play and decides to try to get the entire school board fired. And then when she can't get the school board fired, she just takes her kid out of public school and goes to private school. That to me seems like Florida State right now. I think they've taken it too far. I understand they've been all about this for a while, getting a bigger piece of the pie from revenue and all that. I understand their arguments, but I think this is all a little bit crazy because what Jim Phillips said in the response, they signed it in 2016. They knew exactly what the grant of rights was. Now, if there's something in there that 2/3 of the ADs had to sign off on this extension that Jim Phillips did without anyone's knowledge, well, then there may be something there in the lawsuit, but I think Florida State's going a little too far right now.
I actually hope that they take this thing to court, and I want to see I want to see the end result, right? Like, what if Florida State gets saddled with a $570 million bill?
Oh, I don't think that's going to happen. Then they'll just stay, right? Like, I don't think the court can demand they leave out of the contract. They're suing right now so they can see if they don't have to pay.
Yeah.
Or they can get a settlement. Or that the ACC just says, hey, you got us on some points, we'll let you walk right now, which isn't going to happen either. This is going to be a fight. Here's what's interesting to me, and is very suspicious of the ACC. These reports that you can't go see the grant of rights unless you go to the ACC headquarters and they have someone with the ACC monitor you. You can't take photos of it. You can't take copies of it anywhere. The way they treat the grant of rights with ESPN like it's the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, when you signed your contract with Outkick, like when you sign your contract with Outkick, like they have a copy and you have a copy, right?
Yeah. How does Florida State not have a copy of what it is? But whatever the original contract is, they won't allow people to go and take it or take copies of it or photos for their legal team to look at. You have to go in and you get a certain amount of time to look at it with someone with the ACC monitoring the whole thing. Again, that part of it is very suspicious on the ACC side, but I don't think Florida State has much of a case if, in fact, they sign this grant of rights that they now just think is obsolete, which it is.
Which league would make more sense? Which league would make more sense for Florida State, the SEC or the Big Ten?
The SEC would make more sense for Florida State, but the SEC is not going to want Florida State. I think the Big Ten would make more sense as a partner with them because I don't think the SEC is now in the business of bringing on another team from the state of Florida because they know ESPN's not giving them any more money if they join. So they don't want to share their wealth with even more teams. I don't think the other schools would sign off on that. I think Florida State's valuable, and I believe Florida State and Clemson make the most sense football-wise, culture standpoint to join the SEC. I just don't think the SEC is in any hurry to share their money with anyone right now. Also, because they know these media rights deals aren't getting any richer for them. I think they're going to change a lot moving forward. We may have hit the peak of what that looks like. We're at the peak in the NFL. And that part of it's not going to go up anytime soon.
Deion Sanders and Colorado have college football's #1 transfer class. Should Colorado be a national level contender next year in order to justify the Coach Prime way?
I think they need to be a bowl team at minimum next year, but it's going to be hard. They're joining the Big 12. They're still bad on the offensive line. They're bad on the defensive line. Their biggest win in recruiting was Jordan Seaton, the 5-star #1 offensive tackle in America who committed to them. And news may have changed in the last hour, but last I checked, still hasn't signed with Colorado. Is now entertaining Nebraska and Maryland and Tennessee and Ohio State again. So I just don't see how they're going to have this big transformation because I don't buy that their offensive or defensive lines are fixed. They're going to have good skill players, including Will Shepard from Vanderbilt. They're going to have a really good quarterback. But outside of that, you're going to outscore teams 48-45 every game. I don't think that's feasible for them right now. So, look, they need to improve this year, but they're not going to be some national title contender or even Big 12 champion contender this season. At least I don't see it right now.
Will the Titans win a game the rest of the season?
Titans play Seattle.
At Houston and Jacksonville at home.
Houston, Jacksonville at home. No. I would have said if C.J. Stroud was still possibly going to be out, maybe Houston. But I don't see it. I think they're going to lose out. Ryan Tannehill is going to be the quarterback, and we're going to be left with even more question marks going into the offseason. But the good news for that, Jared, is I brought up last week after they won the game against Miami, their draft position will be better, having lost those 3 games. So maybe, just maybe, they go out and get either a stud offensive tackle or a receiver that's a difference maker with a very high pick. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. is available where they pick. That could be a difference maker for this organization.
Should Peter Skoronski be tried out at left tackle?
Yes. Yes. You know why? You draft tackles with the 11th pick, not guards. So the guy played tackle at Northwestern. He has the ability to do it. Yeah, try him out there. Try everything that you can. That's what I don't get is I know they're bringing in these guys off the street and trying to see what they have, but why would you not try that at this point? How many times, Jared, on Sunday did we see, I counted at least 3, where it wasn't just one offensive lineman getting beat off the snap. It was the entire offensive line caving in around Will Levis.
Yeah.
When he got bent back on the ankle injury, go watch that play. Literally everything closed up around him. He had nowhere to go to scramble. He had no opening. The entire offensive line closed in around him, and he got bent backwards and hurt his ankle on that play. If you're consistently doing that, you got to change things up, and you have to try anything and everything to improve.
Mike Vrabel fired Teair Tart last week. Apparently, it was because of a lack of effort, and according to, I assume, Vrabel, through media people, it was a lack of respect from his teammates. He's been claimed by the Houston Texans. They play next week. Who gets the last laugh, Vrabel or Teair Tart?
Well, Teair Tart will, because he's on a team now that's actually in contention for a playoff spot. So regardless of what he does, he's in a better spot for this year in what they're doing in Houston. And they just came into Nashville and won on Oilers Day with the Titans trying to troll the organization with Case Keenum at quarterback. And it's not like Case Keenum was very good in that game either. And they still found a way to win in overtime. So Teair Tart gets the last laugh. But I will say I like the fact that Mike Vrabel is still the type of NFL head coach that will just straight up cut a guy if he's got an attitude or if he's not playing the way he wants. I respect that about Vrabel.
Are you surprised by Arthur Smith's struggles in Atlanta, and will he be fired?
I am surprised about it, and I think the number one thing that surprises me is his inability to get the ball to his star players. I don't know how Bijan Robinson doesn't get the ball more. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You have to design things to make sure they're getting touches over the course of the game. And
did he not do that when he was the OC here?
I feel like he would. Then I don't know where that changed, but he's not doing that with Atlanta. And, the report came out, and Arthur Blank did the interview this week, but barring complete collapse, he's going to be fine. I don't know how to describe a loss to the one-win Panthers any more than saying complete collapse is right around. Now, they're a 2.5-point favorite at home against Indianapolis this weekend, so they could right the ship with that win. I don't see it. I think they're losing out, and I think Atlanta's going to be looking for a new coach, and that does surprise me because I really like Arthur Smith. I think he's a smart football coach. But it has not worked out in Atlanta.
Should the Titans bring Arthur Smith back if he's fired in Atlanta?
100% yes. Yeah. You bring the last guy back that had a lot of success as offensive coordinator. I would be all for that move if I'm Mike Vrabel.
Here's my theory, too. And I know Vrabel's not going to want to do this, and I don't know if Amy's going to want to pay for this, But the two of them need to go to Mike Munchak's home, and they need to ask him how much it would cost for him to be the offensive line coach. For bygones to be bygones, there is a price for bygones to be bygones. How much, and will you do it?
Is Mike Munchak just out of coaching right now?
Yeah.
So there's a chance he could just come back and coach. I mean, is he retired, or is he retired in air quotes right now?
I think he's retired depending upon the check.
Okay. Well, I'd cut that check. I'd be willing to do that, especially when I watch what happened on Sunday and my possibly star rookie quarterback is getting bent backwards and folded up like he's going into a suitcase because no one on the offensive line can block.
I mean, that play where Levis got hurt, it looked like he died. Like he was motionless. Like it looked like somebody shot him.
I said immediately, I'm watching on television, and I was watching with my parents at the time, and I said, Will Levis is hurt bad. Before anything happened, I saw, because you could see on the TV copy, you could see his face and his chest exposed and his whole body going back, and you could see his calf behind him as his body is getting bent backwards in half. And I was thinking Joe Theismann. I'm thinking the worst possible things when I'm watching that happen. Thankfully, nothing broke, and we got a high ankle sprain, and that's not the end of the world, but it looked terrible.
I'm actually adding this one onto the hot seat right now. If it had been bad, do you think Vrabel would have gotten fired over the offensive line?
No, I don't think so. I think that Amy Adams Strunk chose Mike Vrabel over John Robinson. And I don't think one more bad season or bad set of circumstances is going to change her mind on that choice. So I think she's sticking with him longer than this season because she made the choice and she chose Vrabel as the guy that was more important to success for the team. And I think that they probably like the quarterback. That's a rookie from what they saw. So that does offer them a little bit of hope for the future.
Last one. Tua Tagovailoa this week said he is keeping receipts of those who have doubted him. Is my criticism of Tua included in the receipts?
I doubt it. I think there's probably more. Like who was that? Was it Ryan Clark that basically called him a fat stripper? Yeah, a fat stripper in Atlanta, I think was the reference he made to Tua. I think it's more of that he's talking about with receipts that will be kept. Who knows? Maybe a soundbite from your show makes its way into the Tua resurgence reel.
I highly doubt it.
Run the playoffs.
I highly doubt it, but I absolutely am part of the anti-Tua crew.
Can I say one thing about Nashville media before I sign off with you here?
Sure.
Just one into the hot seat. I am shocked. Like, I understand that it's personal when we come on and talk about coaches' jobs and talk about coaches being bad or players being bad. I understand that it's personal to those players and those coaches. I sometimes get surprised at the level of how personal media members take it when someone criticizes a coach or GM or player that they like or they're in with, right? Like, it's one thing if you go after a media member, they're going to take it personally. I get that. But taking it personal because other media members are, in many cases, rightfully criticizing a coach, a player, a GM, whoever, that's a very odd dynamic to me. I don't know if that happens in every market, but I'm weirded out by the amount of times it seemingly happens in Nashville, where it's like media member A takes his feelings and gets them upset, and it becomes personal because media member B said this about a coach or about a GM. That's odd to me. I don't know if it is anyone else. I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't, that's just always been a weird dynamic in this city, being around for a long time, and I don't fully understand it.
Well, I want to defend myself for a second on that kind of criticism you're talking about, because a bunch of people have told me that on Tuesday at morning skate at the Predators, like the whole discussion amongst the media was, there goes Jared wanting to fire another coach and general manager. And I'm like, this is the first time in 8 years I have called for the Titans to fire a coach. If I own the team, 8 years is plenty of time between coaches. Like, I'm not exactly Jimmy Haslam when it's 8 years in between. It's just that there are other coaches and other teams, right? It's like the hockey team is different than the football team, is different than Jerry Stackhouse, is different than, and I feel like in almost all those cases, like I was right about the hockey team, I'm right about Jerry Stackhouse, and it's just like, get over it. You know what I mean?
Well, I understand disagreeing with an opinion. I disagree with opinions all the time. I disagree with your opinions a lot. I don't understand like taking a sports opinion when you are a sports opinionist and then turning that into almost a personal affront if you're a media member. If you go on here and talk about how bad some media member is locally at their job, then yeah, they're going to take that personally. I would take that personally if someone did that. But your opinion on Mike Vrabel, while that should bother Mike Vrabel or it should bother Rand Carthon, they have every right to be bothered by that. The media member getting bothered by it perplexes me. I do not understand why that is. If the Preds want to be mad about you wanting to fire the coach and GM and bring it up, whatever, okay, that's the organization doing that. But media members talking about it, it's just very, very strange to me. Just wanted to bring that up to close out the hot seat.
I guess I've never even really thought about it. Chad Withrow, as always. Chad, Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful time this week, and we'll talk next week.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you, to everyone else out there. And that's what I'm paid to do, Jared, make people think. So I'm glad to make you think a little bit about that. Thank you so much.
Chad Withrow from Outkick. You know what, though? He felt like he had to say happy holidays to me. I don't feel like I have to say that to him. I think I could say Merry Christmas to everybody, but some people have to say happy holidays to me because they know that I don't celebrate Christmas. So, you know what? You could say Merry Christmas to me. It won't hurt my feelings. 615-737-1025. How many holes do the Rand Carthon Mike Vrabel commission, how many holes do they have to fill? I've already counted it before at about 14. Is it feasible? And I did an exercise today. I want to go over that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Oh, let me tell you about Twice Daily and White Bison. That's right. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Grab a cup of cheer at White Bison. 3 new holiday latte drinks. A mint mocha frappe, a holiday cookie iced latte, and a ginger snap latte. And buy a $20 gift card for someone special and get $5 for yourself. If you're needing something a little different, switch it up with a thoughtfully considered selection of refreshing teas, smoothies that are perfect for any weather. Order ahead to get rewards. Download the app and order ahead and earn rewards. Get 1 free coffee every time you buy 7. That's part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. Again, White Bison, part of Twice Daily, fresh all day.
So if you're looking to point blame about the Titans' offensive line, first, point at the guys who haven't done their job well. And second, and this is the second time I've asked it, I asked Vrabel what degree of guilt or blame goes to the people who decided that this group was good enough to protect the quarterback and to block for the run game. And he avoided the question the second time, and it'll be one of my first questions at the season-ending press conference.
Oh, goody.
Those are the people who are culpable for the pass protection and the run blocking are Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, who assembled this group and thought it was sufficient.
That was PK earlier this week. So everybody talks about all the cap space and draft picks the Titans have. And as I've said many times, I think the Titans have 12 holes. I think they have 10 starters on their team, right? Will Levis. I'm going to give you Tajay Spears, but they're going to have to put somebody with Tajay Spears. Will Levis, Tajay Spears, DeAndre Hopkins, Peter Skoronski, Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, I guess Arden Key, Amani Hooker, and Roger McCreary. So that's 9. So it's 9 starters for next year, unless I left anybody out. So I wondered I said, okay, the 2015 team, Floyd Reese said, was the worst collection of talent he saw in 36 years of being around the NFL. And the next year, John Robinson and Mike Mularkey came in and immediately went from 3-13 to 9-7. So how many different starters did they have that year? And again, they had that trade with the Rams, and they went out in free agency. And so in 2015, that terrible Titans team, I took their starting lineups from their media guide where they have the usual starting lineups. You ready for this 2015 starting lineup, Ian, on offense?
No, it was pretty bad.
Mariota, Antonio Andrews at running back.
I was going to say Bishop Sankey. Did he start then?
Harry Douglas, Kendall Wright. The offensive line had Brian Schwenke at center, Jeremiah Patasi at right tackle.
Yeah.
So the difference between 15 and 16 was instead of Antonio Andrews, they had DeMarco Murray at running back.
Much better.
Instead of Harry Douglas at wide receiver 1, they had Rashard Matthews. Instead of Kendall Wright at wide receiver 2, they had Tajay Sharp, who was a draft choice. At center, they had Ben Jones. At right guard, they had the waiver claim of Josh Klein. And at right tackle, they had Jack Conklin. On defense, they only had 3 different starters. Instead of Cody Sensabaugh, they had Bryce McCain. In the nickel corner position, instead of Parrish Cox, who ended up getting released, they had Kevin Byard. And at safety, instead of Michael Griffin, they had Rashad Johnson. So they filled 9 holes, 4 by free agency, 3 by the draft, 1 by a trade, that was DeMarco Murray, and 1 by a waiver claim. That's 9 holes. That means that even if they do a great job, we're probably still going to be stuck with somebody like Chig or Burks or Azeez Al-Shaair.
Well, Burks is going to be the starter. He was a first-round pick. What are they going to do?
You think Burks is going to be a starter next year?
Yeah.
You're going to count on Burks?
What else are you going to do? That's a first-round pick. You have only so many resources you can put in the wide receiver position.
Gotta go. I mean, clearly Burks ain't it. So
you still got Hopkins, right?
Yeah, but you got to get another. I mean, you can't start with one receiver.
Well, you're going to have to get somebody, but it's not going to be like a starter.
Oh, I mean, if I'm sitting there on the board and Malik Neighbors is there, you may have to take him.
I think I'd be surprised, but I don't know.
So that means that some of these guys that kind of stink, they're going to be back next year. That's why I'm telling you. I'm calling it now. My fireball hot take, Dylan Radins will be the right tackle. He may not start the season as the right tackle, but he will be the right tackle of this team next year. 615-737-1025. 6-pack picks are next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. All right, it's time for six-pack picks. Before we get to that, because we always end the show right on the Titans prediction, I want to wish everybody a very, very Merry Christmas. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season. And while we may disagree with one another from time to time, especially on this show, I just want everybody to know how important you guys are to me. This has been a wonderful year for this program. It's been a wonderful year for the station. And if I don't talk to you before the new year, I hope everybody truly has a safe and happy new year. And of course, the number one word in there is safe. Everybody, please be safe and enjoy the holiday time, whether it's with family, loved ones, friends, whatever it may be, whether it's watching football or opening presents or whatever. I just hope everybody has a very happy holiday and a Merry Christmas. Ian, let's go.
Okay, last week, 3-3 last week.
Yeah.
Let's see. Got the Colts, got the Bills, got the Ravens, missed the Broncos, missed the Eagles, and missed the Titans. So, season 3-3 last week for our season total of 53, 43, and 2.
I have really been playing like 500 ball since about mid-season.
Well, you had a stretch of 500 for a while. Then you picked it up for about 2 weeks to get 10 games over, and now we're kind of back to 500.
Okay, let's go.
Only one college game this week, as the big college games will come next week for our picks. So we will start in San Diego. Number 15 Louisville versus USC is unranked versus USC. This is the Holiday Bowl, which is 7 o'clock on Fox on Wednesday night. The over-under on this game is 57.5. Louisville is minus 7.5.
I'll take Louisville. Obviously, Caleb Williams isn't going to play. This is kind of like, for Louisville, the last hurrah of what was a good season. For USC, this is just like the do we have to of a bad season. I'll take Louisville, and I will be at the Holiday Bowl in San Diego at Petco Park. Really looking forward to it.
Okay, next week we'll pick some more college games, so we will move to the NFL. Interesting game here, surprising records, although I guess it's Flacco versus Keenum. 9-5 Browns at 8-6 Texans. Some type of playoff battle here. Noon CBS, over-under low as we would expect, 40.5. Cleveland is minus 3.
I was going to say Cleveland minus 5. I'll take the Browns. I mean, the JV Texans beat the Titans. Cleveland's defense with Jim Schwartz is not a JV unit. I don't think the Texans will get a single yard in this game. I think that Cleveland will win this game by their defense alone. Runner on punt, runner on punt, runner on punt. Flacco will make a couple of plays as well. I'll take Cleveland.
Okay, another interesting Battle of Florida game here. 8-6 Jacksonville at 7-7 Tampa Bay. 3:05 CBS. Both teams kind of fighting for a playoff spot. Over under 42.5. Tampa Bay minus 2.5.
So is Trevor Lawrence out? Do we know with his concussion if he's in or if he's out? Or
I have not seen that.
So Jacksonville is not playing good ball of late. In fact, they are playing bad ball of late. And Trevor Lawrence did not deliver on Sunday night. I'll take Jacksonville. I just don't trust when it comes to the Buccaneers. I mean, I think they stink. I think Bowles stinks. So I'll take Jacksonville. I don't think Baker Mayfield's going to be in the playoffs, and I don't think Baker's some revelation. I just think that division is atrocious.
Okay, our NFL game on Fox this week should be a good one. The 10-4 Cowboys are traveling to Miami to take on the 10-4 Dolphins. 3:25 on Fox. Over/under is the highest of the week of 49.5. Miami is minus 1.5.
I hate this, right? I hate Dallas on the road. I hate Dak Prescott in big road games. And you know I don't like Tua. Do we know if Tyreek Hill is in?
Questionable, I believe, officially.
I'll take the Cowboys. And I really don't want to. I do not trust Dak Prescott in road games, big ones. I mean, I thought that last week that Buffalo game was stealing candy from a baby. I thought that was so obvious. This one, I don't like Tua. But Dallas got embarrassed last week. Weather's not going to be a factor. Miami fat and happy. I'll take Dallas.
Okay, good Monday Night Football game this week.
It's a great one.
Probably the best game of the week, yeah. 11-3 Ravens at the 11-3 49ers. 7:15 ABC Monday Night Football. Over/under 47.5. San Francisco minus 5.5.
I'll take San Fran. I mean, but this could be a ball game. Like, I just think San Fran is so good that I will probably pick San Francisco every single week until they are eliminated from the playoffs. No matter what, I will pick them. So, like, this week I'll pick them. Next week I'll pick them. The week after that I'll pick them. They won't play in the wild card round. The divisional round at home I'll pick them. If they win that, I'll pick them in the NFC Championship game. I'll pick San Francisco. And I do like the Ravens. And I am worried that Fitz is going to be on my ass when Lamar Jackson makes the AFC Championship game.
Okay, that brings us to the final game. 7-7 Seahawks coming to town. 5-9 Titans, noon, CBS. Over-under, low as we would expect, of 41.5. Seattle -3.5.
Okay, I am going to take the Seahawks. I believe that Ryan Tannehill will play quarterback in this game. I just don't think the Titans have any players. I mean, they are so injured, and they are so packing it in. I think the Titans will keep it respectable for a half or for 3 quarters. I'll go Seahawks 24, Titans 13. Everybody have a very Merry Christmas and a very happy holidays. That's going to do it for us. The Gasparilla Bowl is next. Stillman and Company. We'll see you right before the new year.